A humble girl walked into the billionaire's office with an old letter. The revelation she made brought him to tears and changed their lives forever. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Jessica Lopez trudged onto the cracked sidewalk outside her small studio apartment, shoulders tense against the morning chill. She was 32, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a second-hand coat that had seen better days. The neighborhood hadn't quite woken up yet. A distant siren wailed, and she paused to catch her breath as the city exhaled its usual blend of exhaust and coffee steam. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she ignored it. The day promised another shift at the diner, another mountain of unpaid bills, and the same restless ache that had kept her awake until dawn. She headed toward the bus stop, remembering her mother's anxious words from years ago. "Don't ever let them see you cry." Jessica squared her shoulders as if bracing for invisible scrutiny. Sleep still clung to her eyelids, but she forced herself into forward motion. The opening image of her life felt bleak. Too many regrets, too few triumphs. She checked her reflection in the dirty glass of a closed bodega window. Tired eyes, determined mouth, a shadow of quiet hope that refused to die. Midway down the block, Mrs. Alvarez, her elderly neighbor, waved from her stoop. "Jessica, querida, you off to work again?" "Yes, ma'am," Jessica replied with a polite nod. "How are you feeling today?" "My arthritis is acting up, but I'm alive," the older woman chuckled dryly. "You make sure you take care of yourself, okay? You push too hard." Jessica forced a small smile. "I'll do my best." Minutes later, she stepped onto the bus with a worn-out monthly pass. Cramped seats, stale air, and the random chatter of strangers created a familiar backdrop. She sank onto a cracked plastic seat and closed her eyes. She couldn't afford to indulge in daydreams, but sometimes she let herself imagine a life where she didn't have to race the clock every single day. The bus lurched downtown, past peeling murals and boarded-up storefronts, eventually crossing into the gleaming business district. The contrast always made Jessica's heart twist, a city of glass towers and dreamers, where someone like her felt invisible. In that world, she was little more than a blur behind a diner uniform. By the time she arrived at the restaurant, pink dawn light cast reflective streaks on the skyscrapers. She pulled her apron tight and walked in, only to find her manager, Selena, with arms folded. "You're cutting it close again," Selena scolded. "We open in 5. I need you on the floor." Jessica muttered an apology. She quickly stored her bag in a cramped locker and retied her apron. The shift began in a blur of coffee orders, runny eggs, and half-hearted greetings. She recited the daily specials to tired office workers who barely looked up from their phones. By noon, the diner filled with business types scanning emails between bites of salad. One of them caught Jessica's eye, a tall man in a crisp suit, glancing impatiently at the time on his watch. She recognized the brand. It was worth more than she would make in months. His presence reminded her that there existed a parallel reality where people like him strode with confidence across polished floors and never had to fear an unexpected bill. As she poured him more coffee, he offered a cold, "Thank you," eyes never leaving his phone screen. She wondered if he noticed anything about her at all, or if he was lost in deadlines and deals. A strange longing surfaced, not for him exactly, but for the life he represented: safety, status, freedom from the daily grind. At the end of her shift, she made her way toward the manager's office to collect her tips. She overheard Selena whispering to another employee, "Jessica's reliable, but she's always so tense. I wish she'd lighten up." Jessica paused outside, heart twisting. She needed that job, but every day felt like walking a tightrope. As soon as she had her share of tips, barely enough for groceries, she hurried out. She boarded the bus back home, but instead of going straight to her apartment, she took a detour. She exited near an abandoned community center, locked behind chain-link fencing. Old memories welled up of times she and her younger sister, Carmen, came here for after-school programs, memories of fleeting moments of hope. Overshadowed by the day Carmen disappeared from her life, she pressed a hand against the rusted fence. "I'm not giving up," she whispered to nobody in particular. The wind carried her vow away, lost in the hum of passing cars. This life might have pinned her down, but she clung to the idea that something better was waiting. Whether that meant reconciling with Carmen or simply finding a path out of her endless financial struggles, she refused to let the current reality define her future. Jessica inhaled the crisp air and turned away from the padlocked gate. Across the street, a glossy skyscraper reflected the dying sunlight. On days like this, she felt the weight of an invisible barrier separating her from a world she could hardly imagine, a world in which she might finally be seen. Later that evening, Jessica stood in her cramped kitchen, sorting through a stack of overdue bills. A single fluorescent bulb buzzed overhead. She could almost feel her future shrinking with each passing notice. Rent was overdue, credit card debt had doubled, and the diner barely covered the basics. She set the bills aside, fighting the urge to collapse from exhaustion. She turned on her ancient laptop, waiting for it to sputter into action. A part of her wanted to run away from these responsibilities, but another part insisted she endure. She typed job opportunities into a search engine, scanning disheartening listings. Office assistant, data entry, warehouse clerk. Nothing seemed to offer the break she needed, and every role demanded experience or degrees she didn't have. She rubbed her temples, recalling her mother's final advice before she passed. "Stand tall, even when the world tries to push you down." Those words had kept Jessica going through foster care after Carmen vanished. They helped her survive heartbreaks and betrayals. Now they felt more like an echo than a promise. A sharp knock at the door startled her. She jolted upright, heart thudding. It was nearly 9. She opened the door to find her landlord, Mr. Dunbar, with a stern expression. "Jessica," he began in a measured tone, "I've been patient, but you're 3 weeks late on rent." She clasped her hands together. "I'm sorry, Mr. Dunbar. Tips have been slow." "I'm doing my best," he sighed, arms folded across his chest. "I like you, kid, but I have a mortgage. I can't keep giving you free time. You have 1 more week, or I'll have to give you an eviction notice." Her throat tightened. "Understood." He hesitated, looking momentarily sympathetic. "I hope you figure something out." Then he left, footsteps echoing down the hall. She closed the door, leaning against it as if to hold off reality. Her chest felt heavy. For a moment, tears threatened, but she swallowed them down. She needed a miracle, any lifeline to keep her afloat. Just then, her phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. She nearly ignored it, then pressed accept. "Hello?" A hesitant voice spoke. "Jessica Lopez. This is Warren Barnes. I knew your mother, and I wanted to reach out. Can we meet?" Jessica's mind raced. Her mother had passed years ago. She had never heard this man's name before. "I'm sorry, what? I don't understand." Warren cleared his throat. "I have something important of hers. Something she wanted you to have." She tightened her grip on the phone. "I'm not in a position to— I'll be at the Ridgefield Coffee House tomorrow at 6, he interrupted gently. "If you want answers, come." The line went dead. Jessica stared at the silent phone. Was this some prank? Another scam? Yet curiosity stirred inside her. Could this stranger's appearance be connected to the faint hope she clung to? She sank onto her rickety couch, reeling from the sudden possibility that her mother had left something behind, maybe an explanation, maybe a clue. The next day, after another grueling diner shift, she found herself standing in front of the Ridgefield Coffee House. It was a small cafe perched between a boutique hotel and a high-end spa. She felt out of place, checking her reflection in the window, straightening her worn jacket. Inside, patrons sipped lattes from white porcelain cups, engaged in hushed conversations. She scanned the room until a hand lifted from a corner table. Warren Barnes looked to be in his late 50s, with a tired expression and thinning hair. He wore business casual attire that seemed just a notch above her world. She approached slowly. "Jessica?" he asked, voice low. "Yes," she replied, sitting across from him. "You said you knew my mother." He exhaled, his gaze drifting to the tabletop. "We were close once, many years ago. Before she had you, I was a friend who owed her a favor." He slid a small envelope across the table. "She told me, if something happens, find Jessica, give her this." Her heart pounded as she opened the envelope. Inside was a worn, handwritten letter addressed to Jessica. The words were unfamiliar, but the signature at the bottom was definitely her mother's. Her hands trembled. She glanced up, voice shaking. "Why didn't you give this to me sooner?" Warren frowned. "I only found it recently in my late uncle's belongings. Your mother passed before I could track you down. I tried, but life got in the way. Then I found you by pure chance." Jessica felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Gratitude, anger, confusion. "What's in here that's so important?" His eyes flickered with apprehension. "I don't know. All I can say is, your mother believed this letter would change everything. She mentioned a name once. Jack Powell." A swirl of questions raced through Jessica's mind. The name Jack Powell sounded vaguely familiar. Then she recalled fleeting news headlines about a wealthy real estate mogul. A sense of destiny, both thrilling and terrifying, loomed before her. She tucked the letter safely in her jacket. Her mother's voice echoed again, "Stand tall." And for the first time in a long while, Jessica sensed that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to shift course forever. Jessica hurried back to her apartment, the letter burning in her pocket. She resisted the urge to read it in public, as if opening it too soon might shatter the fragile sense of hope it carried. Once inside, she locked the door and sat on the edge of her old couch. Unfolding the paper carefully, she inhaled slowly and began to read. The letter started with her mother's neat script. "My beloved Jessica, if you're reading this, I'm no longer by your side. I'm sorry I left you so many burdens. Please know I did everything out of love. Remember that name, Jack Powell, for he holds a key to your future that I could never give you." A shiver ran through Jessica. Her mother had always seemed guarded about her past, especially regarding Jessica's father. The letter didn't mention fatherhood outright, but the implication hovered like a storm cloud. She read on, "He owes you more than he'll ever admit. Demand nothing less than the truth." Her hands trembled as she finished the letter. There were no explicit details, no direct confessions, just a haunting reference to a man rumored to be among the wealthiest in the state. She felt both frustration and a flicker of anger at her mother's cryptic message. Why not just tell me the truth outright? She tried to calm her racing thoughts. Could Jack Powell be her father, an uncle, or just an old friend? If her mother wanted her to find him, there had to be a good reason. She thought about the looming eviction, her crumbling finances, and her sister Carmen. Maybe confronting Jack Powell would reveal something that could turn her life around, or at least offer her closure. She grabbed her phone and typed Jack Powell into a search engine. Countless articles popped up. Billionaire philanthropist Jack Powell expands real estate empire. Tech innovation. Charitable foundations. His photo accompanied many of them. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, impeccably dressed, with stern blue eyes and a hint of weariness beneath them. The face looked aristocratic, cold, and somehow sad. Jessica discovered he had an office in the city, a towering glass building overlooking the bay. She stared at the glossy images, reading about his exclusive social circle. The idea of waltzing into that realm made her chest tighten. Still, she remembered the letter's words, "Demand the truth." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown text. "If you have the letter, you know what to do. Don't hesitate." She swallowed, unsure if it was from Warren or someone else. Either way, it felt like an urgent push. Sleep was elusive that night. She lay awake, replaying every memory of her mother's guarded expressions and half-answers about the past. She wondered if Carmen's disappearance had some connection to all this. In a half-dream, she recalled a childhood argument where her mother screamed, "We can't trust him," but the name had never been mentioned. Now, she suspected that tension had always been there, simmering beneath the surface. Morning arrived with a dull grey sky. Jessica had the day off, which gave her time to weigh her next move. She ate a quick breakfast of leftover toast and powdered coffee, then pulled on her nicest pair of jeans and a blouse that wasn't too worn. She braided her hair to keep it neat, though her reflection showed the shadows under her eyes. She whispered to herself, "You can do this." By midday, she stood outside the Powell Tower, heart pounding. The building soared into the clouds, sleek and reflective. She hesitated at the revolving doors, people in tailored suits streaming past. She was invisible to them, just another passerby. She clutched the letter, folded neatly in her jacket pocket, as if it were a passport to a hidden country. A security guard eyed her as she stepped inside. The lobby stretched elegantly, marble floors glowing under artful lighting. She approached the reception desk, voice catching. "I'm here to see Jack Powell." The woman behind the desk, impeccably dressed in a black blazer, glanced at Jessica's clothes and frowned slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" I'm afraid I don't," Jessica said softly. "But it's urgent." The receptionist's lips pressed into a tight line. "Mr. Powell's schedule is fully booked for the next 2 weeks. I can leave a message." Jessica's pulse throbbed. She slipped the letter onto the counter, briefly unfolding it to reveal her mother's name. "I need to speak with him about this. It's a personal matter." The receptionist glanced at the letter's date, decades old, and raised an eyebrow. She tapped a key on her phone console. One moment, Jessica's hands felt clammy, and her stomach churned. Her entire life might pivot on the next few seconds. Finally, the receptionist cleared her throat. "Ms. Lopez, is it?" "You can go to the 34th floor. Someone will meet you by the elevator." Jessica exhaled. Relief collided with a burst of anxiety. She walked toward the elevator bank, ignoring the curious stares from people in suits. She wondered if Jack Powell had recognized the name on the letter, or if this was just standard procedure for unexpected visitors. Either way, she steeled herself. Stand tall. If she wanted answers, she had to face him, face everything. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a mirrored interior. She stepped inside, pressed the button for the 34th floor, and watched her reflection. Fear mingled with defiance in her eyes. As the elevator ascended, she pictured the moment she would meet the man from the photos. The man her mother insisted held some piece of her destiny. At the very least, she would get the truth. At least, she would demand it. The elevator's soft chime signaled arrival, and Jessica emerged into a hushed corridor lined with frosted glass walls. A tall woman with a professional demeanor waited nearby, scanning Jessica with a brisk once-over. "You're Jessica Lopez, I presume. Mr. Powell will see you briefly," she said, leading the way. Jessica swallowed hard, trailing after her through a set of double doors into a spacious office. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic cityscape, cars like tiny ants, the bay glinting under the midday sun. A wide steel desk dominated the center of the room, meticulously organized. Standing behind it, speaking quietly with a suited aide, was Jack Powell. He turned as Jessica entered, his gaze slicing the air, his eyes, stern, distant, briefly flickered with uncertainty. "I'll handle this," he told the aide, who then exited, leaving the office cloaked in heavy silence. Jessica's heart thundered. She felt small against the polished floor and sleek furniture. Jack studied her with a hint of polite impatience. "You requested to see me about a personal matter, Ms. Lopez," he asked, crossing his arms. His tone was distant, but not unkind. She cleared her throat, meeting his gaze. "My mother left me a letter. It mentions your name. She believed you owed me something." She sounded braver than she felt. He raised an eyebrow. "Your mother's name?" "Maria Lopez," Jessica replied, careful to keep her voice steady. She pulled the letter from her pocket, unfolding it enough to show her mother's signature. He took a step closer, focusing on the worn paper. Something flickered behind his cool expression. Recognition, or was it dread? A hush fell between them, charged with unspoken history. "I'm not sure what you're implying," he began softly, "but I do recall the name Maria Lopez from many years ago. She worked at one of my earlier real estate projects." He paused, gaze drifting toward the view. "What exactly did the letter say?" Jessica hesitated. She wanted to lay it all out, but a surge of caution held her back. "It said you hold a key to my future, that you owe me more than you'll ever admit. That I should demand the truth." Her voice wavered on the final word. Jack's posture stiffened. He gestured for her to sit, then sank into the chair behind his desk. "I'm afraid I don't know what that means," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "If your mother believed I owed her something, perhaps it was related to old business dealings or a settlement. I could look into it." His carefully measured words fueled Jessica's suspicion. She fidgeted with the letter, frustration rising. "My mother wrote it before she died. She said this truth would change everything. I need more than vague promises to look into it." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Ms. Lopez, I'm sorry for your loss, but I run a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. I can't possibly recall every—" Jessica cut him off, voice trembling. "We're not talking about a random client. You recognized her name. Don't pretend this was some passing memory." Silence thickened. Jack pressed his lips together. Then he rose, walked to the window. His reflection in the glass looked burdened, shoulders slumped ever so slightly. "Fine," he said at last, turning around. "Maria Lopez, I do remember her. She approached me once, years ago, claiming she had urgent matters to discuss. She never got the chance to fully explain, and then she disappeared." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "She died of health complications, alone and in debt. Did you know that?" He shook his head, lines of regret etching his brow. "No, I didn't. I offered to help her financially at one point, but she refused. She had too much pride." He paused, glancing at Jessica's threadbare jacket. "She worked 2 or 3 jobs, if I'm not mistaken." A flash of resentment flared inside Jessica. Why didn't he help? She stepped forward, letter in hand. "You say you offered help, but you can't recall the details. My mother was a proud woman, yes, but this letter suggests something bigger. If you're not telling me everything, I'll find out another way." Jack exhaled slowly. "Listen, Ms. Lopez, I have a board meeting in 10 minutes. Perhaps we can schedule a longer conversation. My assistant will contact you to—" "No," she said, voice firmer this time. I'm not leaving until I get some answers. He shot her a sharp look. Then his phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lighting up with an incoming call. He seemed torn, eyes shifting between her and the phone. Finally, he accepted the call. I'll be right there, he said curtly, then hung up. Jack Powell reached inside a drawer, retrieving a business card. Look, this is my direct line. Call me tomorrow. We'll arrange something. His eyes wavered, as though searching hers for understanding. I am sorry, truly. Jessica grabbed the card. Disappointment churned in her stomach, but she forced herself to nod. She turned on her heel and walked out of the office. In the elevator, she clutched the card like a lifeline. The encounter left her with more questions than answers, but a spark of determination blazed in her chest. She had poked a hole in his composed facade, felt the flicker of guilt behind those cool blue eyes. Outside, a warm breeze ruffled her hair. She looked up at the sky, so distant beyond the glinting tower. Something inside her said that if she dug deep enough, she'd uncover a truth that could reshape both their lives. For once, she believed her mother's cryptic words, "Demand the truth," and she wasn't about to stop now. Jessica stepped onto the sidewalk, business card in hand, her emotions a tangled mess. A million voices warred in her mind, one telling her to flee back to her comfort zone, the other urging her forward, insisting she confront Jack Powell again and force him to speak. She pictured the look on his face when she mentioned her mother, the crack in his mask. If there was nothing to hide, why that flicker of fear? She wandered the streets without direction, eventually finding herself near the waterfront. Leaning on a rusted railing, she watched the sunlight shimmer on the waves. A memory stirred, her mother once holding her and Carmen at a similar pier, promising a better life. She swallowed the lump in her throat, wishing Carmen was still around to share in this confusion, to help puzzle out their mother's secrets. Her phone buzzed, startling her. The screen showed a message from Warren Barnes. Be cautious. Powell is powerful, and not everyone wants the truth exposed. She typed back, "What do you know?" But no reply came. Nightfall found her pacing her apartment. The letter spread out on the coffee table. She reread every word, searching for hidden meanings. He owes you more than he'll ever admit. Over and over, her mind reeled at the possibilities. Was Jack Powell her father? Or had he done something terrible to her mother in the past? Her landlord's warning echoed in her head too. Another week, and she'd be out on the street. She considered all the ways this confrontation with Jack could help. Maybe he'd feel compelled to give her financial support, or maybe it was something else entirely. She kicked a box of old shoes in frustration. "What am I supposed to do?" she muttered. Early the next morning, she woke up determined. She dialed Jack Powell's direct line, her heart pounding. It rang several times before a clipped voice answered, "Jack Powell speaking." She steeled herself. "This is Jessica Lopez. We met yesterday." A pause. "Yes, Ms. Lopez," he said, sounding guarded. "I told you I'd arrange a time. My assistant can schedule—" "No." She cut in, voice trembling yet firm. "I can't keep dancing around this. I need answers now. Face to face." He hesitated, then exhaled. "Fine. Today at noon, the Grand Oak restaurant on Fifth Avenue. It's more private. Will that suffice?" She nodded, forgetting he couldn't see her. "I'll be there." At exactly noon, Jessica walked into the Grand Oak restaurant, noticing the crisp tablecloths and soft classical music drifting through the air. A hostess guided her to a secluded table by tall windows. Jack sat there, hands folded, a tense smile barely touching his lips. She slid into the seat across from him. He studied her, then signaled the waiter away when he approached. "You've got my attention," he said quietly. "What do you want?" She tried to control the shaking in her hands. I want the truth about my mother. Did you have a relationship with her? Are you—" She couldn't quite say the word father. It stuck in her throat. His expression tightened. Your mother was a courageous woman. She approached me about certain family matters. But she never said you were my child. That rumor, if you even suspect it, is news to me. We parted ways abruptly, and I never heard from her again. Jessica stared, her heart pounding. So why did she think you owed me something? Jack drummed his fingers on the table. Because she believed I was responsible for the downfall of her parents' business. Your grandparents lost their small property when my firm invested in the area. She wanted restitution. I offered a settlement, but she wouldn't accept it out of pride or stubbornness. She leaned back, absorbing his words. That doesn't explain why she told me you hold the key to my future. He hesitated, eyes flicking to the window. Maybe she believed an apology wasn't enough. She wanted an opportunity for you, a better life, something more meaningful than money could buy. Jessica's throat tightened. Do you have proof of any of this? Jack glanced away, regret etched on his features. I have old files, old records of that transaction. I can show you. But that's it, Ms. Lopez. I'm sorry if you were hoping for something more personal. She swallowed a surge of confusion and disappointment. My entire life. I thought maybe my father walked out on us. I assumed. Maybe you— He reached across the table, gently touching her hand. I'm not your father. If I were, I'd have taken responsibility. His voice trembled with unexpected emotion. But I do owe you an apology. That real estate deal hurt many families. Your mother tried to stand up to me, but I was too concerned with my company's bottom line. She pulled her hand away, uncertain whether to believe him. The swirl of emotions left her dizzy. I still feel like there's more you're not saying. He sighed. Let me gather the documentation and show you everything. Meet me tomorrow at my home office, somewhere private where we can talk without interruption. If there's any truth I've overlooked, we'll uncover it together. She studied his face. For the first time, she saw genuine remorse. It wasn't the confession she had expected or the father figure she had secretly imagined. Yet something about his pained expression held her in place. Fine, she agreed, voice subdued. Tomorrow. They exchanged a nod of understanding. As she stood to leave, a tremor of uncertainty rippled through her. Am I walking into another dead end, or is this the path to finally understanding my mother's secrets? She walked away, heart heavier than before, wondering which direction her life would take now that she'd stirred the waters of the past. Jessica arrived at Jack Powell's estate late in the afternoon, riding an old bus that dropped her off at the edge of a sprawling, gated community. The driver seemed uneasy letting her out in front of such grand iron gates, but she thanked him and walked up the long driveway alone. Tall hedges framed the path, carefully manicured lawns hinting at wealth beyond anything she had witnessed. Her heart pounded with each step, the letter from her mother once again tucked safely in her jacket. A security guard appeared by a smaller side entrance. "Miss Lopez?" he asked politely, scanning a clipboard. She nodded, and he punched in a code on a keypad. The gates parted with a low mechanical hum, revealing an elegant stone mansion at the end of the driveway. Jessica forced her shoulders back, determined to maintain composure. This meeting felt like crossing a threshold into a new reality, a break into a world so alien that she couldn't help feeling out of place. She followed the path to the front entrance, where a housekeeper opened the door and ushered her into a stately foyer lined with polished marble floors and high ceilings. A large, modern art sculpture stood in the center, abstract shapes of steel and glass reflecting the glow of a chandelier. The housekeeper led her through a corridor until they reached a cozy library. Dark wooden shelves extended to the ceiling, packed with volumes on business, history, and art. Jack was waiting, dressed more casually than before in a crisp shirt and slacks. He seemed relieved that she had come. With a nod, he invited her to sit in a leather armchair. She perched on the edge, eyes darting to the towering bookshelves. "You have an impressive place," she offered, unsure how else to break the silence. He let out a tight smile. "Thank you. It belonged to my grandfather originally. I did a lot of renovations to modernize it." He paused, then gestured to a small stack of folders on a side table. "These are the old records I mentioned. Property deeds, transaction details, everything about your grandparents' land that my company acquired 20 years ago." Jessica leaned forward, scanning the topmost page. The official language blurred in front of her eyes, but she saw her grandparents' names with a final transaction date that matched her recollection of when her family lost their home. She glanced at Jack. "So this is the reason my mother always said we couldn't trust people with money. She believed you manipulated them." Jack pressed his lips together. "It was a standard acquisition, but I was young, ambitious, and I focused on the bottom line. Your grandparents were behind on their mortgage, and my investors saw an opportunity. If I could go back, I'd handle it differently." He gave a heavy sigh. "I offered your mother a settlement years later, but she refused. She wanted an apology, real accountability. At the time, I didn't know how to give that." She sifted through the documents, her heartbeat unsteady. The scope of everything her family lost felt overwhelming. "Why didn't my mother ever take you to court?" He blinked. "She threatened to. My legal team was ready, but she disappeared from my radar and never pursued it." Jessica imagined her mother's struggles, her stubborn pride, her fear of powerful men who could crush her in an instant. She set the papers down, tears burning at the back of her eyes. She must have felt hopeless. Jack nodded, eyes shadowed with regret. She was a strong woman, though, persistent. I admired that about her. Emotions roiled inside Jessica. The truth was painful, but also liberating. At least she had something concrete, a foundation to understand why her mother had been so guarded. Still, a gnawing doubt remained. What if this wasn't the entire truth? Her mother's letter suggested something else, something bigger. Is there anything else? Anything about my father, or my sister, or any personal matter you might know about? She asked softly. He looked at her, brows knitting. Your mother never mentioned a sister. She said she had one daughter, living in foster care after a tragedy in the family. That's all I recall. A flicker of confusion passed across his face. You have a sister? She hesitated, surprised by the admission. I do. Carmen. She disappeared from the system when I was 16. I assumed my mother had told you. Jack shook his head. No. She never spoke of a second child. I'm sorry. Silence settled between them. Jessica studied his face, searching for deceit but finding only genuine concern. He stood and walked to a wide window overlooking the back garden. I suspect your mother wanted you to confront me not just for restitution, but to force me to understand what I took from your family, and maybe to see if I'd finally do the right thing. Jessica followed him, pressing a palm against the cold glass. Outside, a fountain sparkled in the setting sun, water splashing in gentle arcs. But what is the right thing now? She asked, voice trembling. This happened so long ago. My family is still broken. Carmen is gone. My mother died in debt. Knowing how we lost our land doesn't bring them back. Jack turned to her, expression somber. I can't undo the past, but I can help you now, if you let me. You're living in precarious conditions. Let me at least give you a safe place to stay while you figure out your next steps. It's the least I can do." She stiffened, pride warring with desperation. Her eviction loomed, and she felt cornered. Accepting help from the man who once destroyed her grandparents' livelihood felt like betrayal, yet her mother's words echoed in her mind. Demand the truth. She had done that, and the truth left her with an uncertain future. "All right," she said, her tone guarded. "But this isn't charity. I'm going to pay you back somehow." A sad smile crossed his face. "I wouldn't dare stand in your way." He offered his hand tentatively, and after a long pause, she placed her hand in his. A glimmer of mutual understanding passed between them, fragile and new, signifying the beginning of a reluctant alliance, both aware that the worst might still lie ahead. Jessica moved into a small guest suite on the third floor of Jack's mansion the very next day. The arrangement felt surreal. Her meager belongings in a place of such opulence, she couldn't shake the sensation that at any moment she might be told this was all a mistake and shown the door. She spent the morning unpacking a single duffel bag, basic clothes, worn shoes, a handful of old photographs of her mother and Carmen. Everything she owned fit neatly into a bedroom closet that was larger than her entire bathroom back at the apartment. A pang of guilt washed over her, recalling that she still owed Mr. Dunbar rent. She made a mental note to repay that debt as soon as possible, no matter what. A soft knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find a petite woman in her 40s, wearing a friendly smile. "Hello, I'm Denise. I manage the housekeeping staff," she said, eyes kind. "Would you like something to eat or drink?" Jessica hesitated, then mustered a polite smile. "I'm fine for now, thank you. I might get a coffee if that's okay." "Of course, I'll bring one right up." Denise gave a small nod and retreated, leaving Jessica feeling oddly like a guest at some exclusive resort. She wandered the mansion's halls, passing framed artwork and tasteful decor. In a bright sitting room near the staircase, she encountered Jack, speaking in a low tone on the phone. He ended the call when he noticed her. "Good morning," he greeted, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Morning." She stood awkwardly by the doorway. "I wanted to thank you for letting me stay here." He nodded, looking sincere. "You're welcome." Stepping forward, he pointed to a set of French doors leading to a balcony. "Would you like to see the view? It's quite something." They stepped outside, where the breeze carried a faint scent of gardenias. From this vantage point, the city skyline appeared in the distance, and below, a manicured lawn led to a small lake dotted with willow trees. Jessica exhaled, overwhelmed by the beauty. "I never thought I'd see this side of life." He glanced at her, brow creasing with concern. "I hope you don't feel trapped here. You're free to come and go as you like." She wrapped her arms around herself, conflicted emotions swirling. "I appreciate that. But it's hard not to feel out of place." Jack turned to look at the cityscape. "I understand. Sometimes I feel out of place too, and this is my home." She studied him, noting a hint of sadness in his voice. "Really?" he sighed. "It might sound ridiculous, but there are days I'm not sure if all this success is worth the emptiness it creates. My parents died in a plane crash when I was young, leaving me their fortune. I grew up too fast, maybe. Focused on building the company because it was all I knew how to do." Jessica caught a glimpse of genuine vulnerability, remembering the stoic businessman who had faced her in that tall office. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I lost my mother too. But it's not the same. I can't imagine growing up alone with so much responsibility." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind them. Denise arrived with a tray, 2 cups of coffee, cream, and sugar. Jessica took a mug, inhaling the comforting aroma. Jack accepted the other cup, thanking Denise, who then left them on the balcony. They sipped in companionable silence until Jessica's phone vibrated with a text. She glanced down, seeing Warren Barnes's name. "We need to talk. Urgent." Another jolt of anxiety surged. She remembered his cryptic warnings. Jack noticed her frown. "Everything all right?" She locked the phone. "Yeah, it's just someone who told me about the letter in the first place." Jack finished his coffee and set the cup on the tray. "You can invite him here if you want. I'd be curious to hear what else he might know." "Maybe," she replied softly, unsure if she could trust Warren enough to bring him to Jack's estate. Tension coiled in her stomach. Who else was involved in this story? She spent the remainder of the morning exploring the grounds, the ache of guilt gnawing at her each time she was reminded of her old life. She ventured into the garden, hands brushing against blossoming roses, imagining her mother's expression if she could see Jessica here. Would her mother approve, or would she scold her for accepting a favor from the man she blamed for everything? As the afternoon sunlight stretched across the lawn, Jessica returned indoors and found Jack in the library, poring over business reports. He glanced up. "There's a small gallery opening tonight for one of my charity foundations. Would you like to accompany me? It's not usually my scene, but I need to put in an appearance." She hesitated, then considered the opportunity. Maybe stepping into his world, seeing how he operated, would help her piece together missing parts of the story. "All right," she agreed quietly. "I'll go." He offered a tentative smile. "Great. We can leave around 7. When she returned to her room, uncertainty fluttered in her chest. Merging their worlds felt impossible, yet here they were, forging an uneasy alliance. The seed of trust might be fragile, but it was there. She clung to it, hoping to find the answers her mother had wanted her to uncover. That evening, Jessica found herself in a borrowed cocktail dress. One of Jack's staff had lent it to her, and a pair of simple black heels that pinched her toes. She inspected her reflection in the bedroom mirror, uncertain if she looked elegant or merely trying too hard. The color was a deep navy blue, tasteful yet slightly fancier than anything she would have chosen on her own. A soft knock at the door. "Ready!" Jack's voice carried through the wood. She stepped into the hallway, feeling self-conscious. His eyes flickered with approval. "You look great," he said quietly, offering a polite smile. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, projecting quiet confidence. They descended the sweeping staircase in silence, the tension of their new arrangement palpable. The drive to the gallery took half an hour, winding through upscale neighborhoods until they reached a renovated warehouse district. Converted lofts and art spaces lined the street. Jessica admired the vibrant murals splashed across brick walls, and as they parked, she noticed paparazzi lingering outside. Her chest tightened. She wasn't used to cameras flashing in the night. Jack gently guided her past the small throng of reporters. "Just keep walking," he murmured, voice calm. She raised an arm to shield her face, feeling exposed. Inside, the gallery buzzed with cultured chatter. Stylish guests sipped champagne while admiring modern art pieces. A curator rushed over to greet Jack, offering effusive thanks for his philanthropic support. He introduced Jessica briefly as a friend, which drew curious stares. She forced a polite smile, feeling like a fish out of water. They moved from painting to painting, and Jessica attempted to appreciate the swirling shapes and bold colors. A wealthy couple approached, expressing admiration for Jack's generosity. "You've done so much for the community," said the woman, all bright lipstick and diamonds. Her gaze slid over Jessica, clearly assessing her clothes, her posture, her every move. Jack deftly guided the conversation to the artworks, but Jessica caught the not-so-subtle undertone of the couple's curiosity. She busied herself reading the placard beside an abstract painting, heart thrumming with the awareness that she didn't belong here. This was Jack's reality, a sphere of influence and power where everyone wore masks of polished civility. After what felt like an eternity, Jack led her to a quieter corner near a sculpture installation. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, forcing a casual expression. "Yes, just overwhelmed. This isn't my usual scene." He seemed about to reply when another man approached, older, with a well-groomed beard. He offered Jack a handshake. "Jack, always good to see you. You still owe me a meeting about that new development proposal." His eyes flicked to Jessica. "And who is this lovely young woman?" "Jessica," Jack said firmly. "She's with me." "Jessica, this is Gerald Barnes, a long-time associate." Jessica's pulse stuttered at the name Barnes. Could there be a connection to Warren Barnes? She offered a polite handshake. "Nice to meet you." Gerald inclined his head, curiosity dancing in his eyes. "Charmed. I see your companion is branching out in more ways than one, Jack." His tone carried a strange edge, as if he knew more than he let on. Jack's jaw tensed. "We all branch out eventually, Gerald." Gerald let out a soft chuckle, then excused himself, leaving a chill in the air. Jessica touched Jack's arm. "Is he related to Warren Barnes?" Jack shrugged. "I'm not sure. Possibly. Gerald's been in business circles for years, but I don't know his family details." He glanced around the gallery. "Let's find somewhere to sit." They settled into a small lounge area near the back, away from prying eyes. Jessica studied Jack's expression. "Is there something you're not telling me about him?" He rubbed his temples. "Gerald is old money, tied to several real estate ventures. He's always looking to benefit from any inside track I might offer. I've never trusted him fully." Jessica's phone buzzed in her clutch. Another text from Warren Barnes. "I have information about your sister. Must meet." Her pulse jumped. She rose abruptly, ignoring Jack's questioning look. "I need to step outside for a moment." She slipped through the door onto a terrace, the night air cool against her flushed cheeks. She dialed Warren's number, huddling near a planter of tall ferns for privacy. He answered on the second ring. "Jessica. Good. I was worried you wouldn't call." She tried to steady her voice. "You said you have info about Carmen." "Yes, I've been digging. A friend of mine works at a records office. There's an old file linking your sister to a youth shelter in Chicago about 8 years ago, but she vanished shortly after. I think we can track her if we move quickly." Jessica's breath caught. "Why are you helping me?" "Because your mother wanted me to, and because Carmen deserves a chance if she's out there, right?" Emotion clogged her throat. "Thank you, Warren. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Sure," he said. "Text me a place and time. And Jessica, watch out for Powell. Men like him protect their interests above all else." She ended the call, heart hammering. Part of her wanted to trust Jack, but Warren's caution rattled her. Could Jack be hiding something else about Carmen? Or was this strictly about the property deal? Jessica turned to go back inside and found Jack leaning against the doorway, concern etched across his features. "You disappeared so suddenly," he murmured. "Is everything okay?" She hesitated, thoughts in turmoil. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I might have a lead on my sister." His eyes softened. "That's good news, isn't it?" "It could be," she whispered, stepping past him into the glow of the gallery lights. As they returned to the crowd, she felt a surge of determination. She would learn the truth about Carmen, about her mother's letter, and about Jack Powell's real role in it all, even if the answers proved more complicated than she ever imagined. The next morning, Jessica rose before dawn, her mind teeming with plans. She dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, slipping out of the mansion while the staff were likely still asleep. Outside, a cool breeze greeted her. She texted Warren as she walked down the driveway. "Meet me at that coffee shop on Ridgefield at 9. His reply was immediate. "I'll be there." She had just enough cash for a ride share, so she used her phone to call one, not wanting to burden Jack's driver or risk Jack insisting on coming along. Soon, she arrived at the same cozy cafe where she first met Warren. Nostalgia tugged at her when she spotted the corner table. She settled into a seat, ignoring the swirl of conflicting loyalties in her chest. Warren entered a few minutes later, looking tense. He ordered a black coffee and sat across from her, sliding a thin file across the table. "I promised I'd find something. Here's all I have so far." Jessica opened the folder, scanning photocopied documents. A sign-in sheet from a Chicago youth shelter, a typed note about Carmen's brief stay. The date matched the year Carmen ran away from their foster home. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, relief and sadness colliding. "So she was alive, at least until then," she whispered. Warren's voice was gentle. "Yes, for sure. She registered under her real name, Carmen Lopez. Then a few weeks later, she disappeared again. No leads after that. The shelter manager said she left without explanation." Jessica clutched the paper. "Why did my mother never mention this? Did she even know Carmen made it to Chicago?" She rubbed her forehead. "And what does Jack Powell have to do with all of this?" Warren shifted uncomfortably. "I can't be certain, but I suspect your mother believed Jack owed you resources. Maybe not child support, but restitution, enough to help you both find Carmen and rebuild your lives." She frowned. "He told me the property deal was the only reason, that he felt guilty over the way my grandparents lost their home. He never mentioned anything about Carmen." Warren's gaze hardened. "Men like him rarely show all their cards. Are you sure he's not manipulating you?" Jessica thought of Jack's quiet remorse, his invitation to stay in his home, the glimpses of vulnerability he'd shown. She also recalled how quickly he'd changed the subject whenever deeper topics emerged. "I don't know," she admitted. "He's not as heartless as I expected, but something still feels incomplete." Warren leaned back, folding his arms. "Be careful. Guilt can be a powerful motivator, but so can self-preservation. You need to decide how far you're willing to push." Jessica closed the file and wrapped it carefully in her jacket. "I'll keep digging, thank you. I'll let you know if I learn anything more." She signaled for a refill of coffee, determined to follow every lead about Carmen, no matter how faint. They parted ways, and she found herself wandering the city streets, lost in thought. She couldn't bear returning to Jack's mansion immediately, unsure how to handle the new information. Eventually, hunger drew her into a small diner for a late breakfast. As she sipped orange juice, her phone vibrated, a message from Jack. "Where are you? Is everything all right?" She stared at the screen, guilt tugging. "I'm fine. I just needed some air. I'll be back soon," she typed. She had no idea if she should tell him about Warren's file, or if that might endanger her search. Part of her feared that if Jack learned Carmen's location, he might do something to keep them apart. But another part doubted he'd go that far. The conflicting instincts tore at her. Late in the afternoon, she finally returned to the mansion. She found Jack in the library again, scanning emails on a laptop. He looked up, relief crossing his face. "I was worried." "You left so early." She set her jacket down, voice subdued. "I met an old friend. Just needed to clear my head." He studied her expression. "I understand." Closing the laptop, he walked around the desk. "Jessica, I need your help with something. There's an upcoming charity auction. I'd like you to attend as my guest, and also to consider giving a short speech about the importance of community support. You've lived on the other side. Your perspective might inspire donors." She blinked in surprise. "You want me to speak in front of wealthy benefactors? Are you sure they'd even listen?" He offered a small smile. "They'll listen to anyone I vouch for." And I think your story could move them, unless you'd rather not." Jessica hesitated. She hated the spotlight, but recognized an opportunity to amplify the struggles of families like hers. Her mother had fought alone, never receiving help. Maybe she could channel that pain into something constructive. "All right," she agreed. "I'll do it." A surge of determination filled her. She would use every chance to influence this world that had once crushed her family. If Jack truly wanted to right old wrongs, perhaps this was a step in the right direction. Still, a voice in the back of her mind reminded her to remain cautious. Jack nodded. "Thank you. I'll have my assistant send you details." She left him in the library, the folder about Carmen pressed against her ribs under her sweater. As night fell across the mansion's windows, she slipped into her room, locked the door, and whispered to the darkness, "I won't let this become a distraction from finding her." Even as she lay awake, the memory of Jack's earnest gaze stayed with her. Somewhere beneath her suspicion lurked an inconvenient truth. Her heart might be drawn to him in ways she never anticipated, and that, she realized with a chill, might be the most dangerous secret of all. In the days leading up to the charity auction, Jessica threw herself into learning every detail about the event. Jack arranged for a communications specialist to coach her on public speaking, walking her through how to structure a compelling narrative about her life's hardships. She practiced in the privacy of her room, voice shaky at first, gradually finding a measured tone to convey honesty without self-pity. Still, the tension between her and Jack lingered. Their conversations danced around deeper truths, both uncertain how much to trust the other. Whenever Jessica caught Jack watching her, a knot tightened in her stomach, equal parts attraction and wariness. One afternoon, she mustered the courage to ask him about the Barnes family. They were in the mansion's kitchen, where she was rummaging for a snack. Jack was sipping tea, scanning his phone. "Jack," she began, setting down an apple, "I wanted to ask, do you know a Warren Barnes?" He frowned. "Not personally. The only Barnes I really know is Gerald, who we ran into at the gallery." "Why?" She took a bite of the apple, choosing her words carefully. "I've come across Warren's name in connection to my mother's letter. He said he was helping her once, claimed to have known her well." She watched his reaction. Jack's eyes clouded. "I'm not aware of him, but if he's connected to Gerald, be careful. Gerald is influential in many circles. He doesn't always operate transparently." He paused, scanning her face. "Does Warren have something to do with Carmen?" Her heart skipped. The mention of her sister felt too intimate. "He's just digging into my mother's past, that's all." Jack nodded slowly, sipping his tea. "If you need help verifying anything he says, let me know. I can put my legal team or private investigators on it." She forced a polite smile, uncertain whether that would be a blessing or a risk. "I'll keep that in mind." That evening, after another practice session for the auction speech, Jessica retreated to her room. She found a message on her phone from Warren. "Be careful with Jack. He has other obligations you don't know about." She closed the notification with a shaky sigh, torn between loyalty to her mother's memory and the subtle sense that Jack might be sincere in wanting to help. Unable to sleep, she roamed the mansion's corridors, eventually ending up outside the library. She heard Jack's voice from within, muffled and tense. She paused near the crack of the door, feeling a twinge of guilt about eavesdropping, but curiosity overcame her. "Gerald, I told you," Jack was saying, exasperation in his tone. "I'm not interested in that deal. It goes against what I'm trying to do for the community." A muffled response, the words indistinct. Jack's voice rose again, quiet but firm. "I don't care how profitable it might be. I have enough skeletons in my closet. I'm not adding more. The conversation is over." Footsteps sounded, and she darted back, pressing against the wall as Jack ended the call. Her mind whirled. Gerald was pushing deals on Jack, perhaps deals that harmed people like her family had once been. Jack seemed to resist, suggesting he was changing his ways. That knowledge offered a spark of cautious relief. She slipped away before he could catch her and returned to her room. Lying in bed, she considered her mother's unwavering resentment toward Jack, contrasted now by evidence that he might be attempting to do good. People can change, she thought. Then a pang of guilt followed. Could her mother have been wrong about him all along, or had he only reformed after it was too late? The day of the charity auction arrived, set to take place at a luxurious downtown hotel ballroom. Jessica spent the afternoon getting ready, wearing a simple but elegant dress that Denise helped her pick out. She pinned her hair up, her reflection revealing nerves etched on her face. Jack waited by the mansion's main entrance, dressed in a refined tuxedo. When Jessica appeared, he cleared his throat, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You look ready," he offered gently. She lifted her chin, swallowing nerves. "I'm as ready as I'll ever be." They arrived at the hotel, greeted by the glimmer of chandeliers and the soft hum of an expectant crowd. Large round tables dotted the ballroom, each with a centerpiece arrangement. A small stage had been erected near the front, a microphone waiting. Jack guided Jessica around, introducing her to a handful of guests. Although they were gracious, she sensed their curiosity about her role in Jack's life. She spotted Gerald Barnes across the room, deep in conversation with a few suited men. He looked up, meeting her gaze with a polite nod that carried an undercurrent of calculation. Jessica's pulse quickened. Did he know she was investigating Warren's leads or suspect she was onto something else? An hour into the event, a program director took the mic, welcoming everyone. Presentations about charitable initiatives followed, applause drifting politely. Finally, Jack escorted Jessica to the stage. She stood behind the mic, scanning dozens of unfamiliar faces. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared everyone could hear it. She told her story in plain words, growing up in tough circumstances, losing her family home, battling an unending cycle of debt. She spoke of how community support was a lifeline for those who had little else. The audience shifted, leaning forward as she described her struggle to retain hope. When she finished, a hush enveloped the ballroom before applause burst forth, echoing against gilded walls. Jessica stepped back, adrenaline coursing through her. She saw tears in the eyes of a few attendees. Even Jack seemed moved, his applause genuine. Yet, as she left the stage, she felt a chill run down her spine. This world was opening up to her, but at what cost? A swirl of new doubts shadowed her victory. If Gerald was conspiring, if Warren had secrets, if Jack was still hiding something, everything might unravel as quickly as it had begun to coalesce. She forced a smile, shaking hands with donors who praised her courage. On the surface, it felt like a triumph. Beneath the surface, she could almost hear her mother's voice. Demand the truth, no matter how bright the lights seem. For Jessica, the real battle had only just begun. A tense hush settled over the mansion after the charity auction. Jessica sensed new ripples in the air every time she passed staff members in the hallway. She couldn't say if it was her imagination or if Jack's entire household felt the undercurrent of secrecy. The morning after the event, Jack seemed preoccupied, speaking in clipped tones to someone on his phone. Jessica waited in a nearby sitting room, half hoping he would share whatever troubled him. He ended the call and found her standing by a large window framed with velvet drapes. "We raised a decent amount of money last night," he said, managing a faint smile. "You were terrific up there, by the way." She folded her arms, recalling the applause that had thundered through the ballroom. "Thank you. I hope it helps. But you seem worried." His gaze flicked away. I have reason to believe Gerald Barnes is stirring up trouble. He's been pushing some development deal I want no part of, and he's determined to force my hand. That phone call was from my legal team." Her pulse quickened. "You think he wants to blackmail you?" Jack exhaled slowly. "Blackmail, sabotage, whatever angle suits him. Gerald Barnes invests aggressively, and if I refuse to join, he might undermine me in other ways. He's not above using personal information to gain leverage." She recalled Gerald's piercing stare at the gallery, then the cautionary texts from Warren. The connection between father and son, if that was the relation, looked darker by the minute. "What if Warren is part of this?" Jack's expression turned grim. "Without proof, I can't be sure, but I won't be caught off guard again. I'm taking steps to protect everything I've built, including what I've offered you." A swirl of conflicting emotions pulled at her. On one hand, she wanted to trust that Jack's intentions were good. On the other, Warren's warning still clung to her thoughts. "I get that you need to protect yourself, but if Barnes is dangerous, maybe I should leave. I don't want to be used against you." A flicker of genuine alarm crossed his face. "No," he said quietly. "Stay. Please. If Gerald tries to come at me personally, your absence won't stop him. Let me handle him." She studied his tense posture. "All right," she said, her voice catching. "But I won't stand by blindly. If you're in trouble, I want to know." Jack's gratitude showed in the gentle quirk of his lips, though his eyes remained troubled. "I promise to keep you informed." He left for a series of meetings downtown, and Jessica found herself pacing the corridors again, each step echoing in her chest. Eventually, she retreated to the library, opening the folder Warren had given her about Carmen. She reread every detail: her sister's time in Chicago, the abrupt disappearance from the youth shelter. The question of why Carmen never reached out haunted her. If she was still alive, why hadn't she tried to find Jessica? Lost in thought, Jessica barely noticed Denise entering. The housekeeper cleared her throat gently. "Sorry to bother you, Miss Lopez. There's a visitor at the front door. A Mr. Warren Barnes. He insisted I inform you." Jessica's pulse accelerated. "He's here? Now?" "Yes, ma'am. Should I send him away?" She hesitated, remembering Jack's warnings. But she needed more clarity, and Warren seemed determined enough to appear unannounced. "No, it's fine. I'll speak with him." She found Warren in the foyer, an uneasy expression on his face. He wore a simple jacket and carried a messenger bag. "Jessica, I'm sorry for dropping by like this," he said quietly, glancing around at the elegant surroundings. "But things are moving faster than I expected. I had to warn you." Her throat tightened. "What's going on?" Warren lowered his voice. "I think Gerald Barnes has discovered I'm helping you. He's my uncle, and he's extremely upset that I'm sabotaging his plans with Jack Powell. He might retaliate. You need to be careful. And so does Powell." Jessica's mind spun. "So you are related to him?" Warren nodded. "Yes, I don't share his ambitions. Though, he's threatened to cut me off from the family unless I back down. But I gave your mother my word I'd protect you. And now your sister's situation might be tied into all of this." Her heart thudded. "How?" "Gerald has connections with less than reputable individuals. I found hints that Carmen's disappearance could be linked to debt collectors or traffickers he once worked with. It's not definitive, but the timeline overlaps. If he learns you're looking for her, he might try to use that information against you. Or Jack." Jessica's stomach roiled. "That's awful." "Does Jack know any of this?" Warren shook his head. "I doubt it. Jack was naive about Gerald's underhanded tactics years ago, which is how he ended up hurting your family in the property deal in the first place. Gerald manipulated everything behind the scenes, but I don't have tangible proof, only partial leads." She clenched her fists. So what do we do? Warren glanced at the grand staircase. We gather evidence. We dig deeper into Carmen's files, see if Gerald's name shows up. I have a contact who can hack into certain records, but it's risky. Jessica inhaled shakily. If it helps find Carmen, I'll risk it. Warren placed a hand on her shoulder, voice low. Then we work together, but watch your back. Gerald will stop at nothing if he thinks he can force Jack into a bad deal or silence you. A door creaked somewhere down the hall, and Jack's footsteps echoed. He appeared, eyes flicking between them. "Warren Barnes, I presume?" he said, guarded. Warren squared his shoulders. "Yes, we need to talk, Mr. Powell, for Jessica's sake. Maybe yours too." Tension rippled in the air. Jack's gaze darted to Jessica, silently questioning whether he could trust Warren. She nodded softly. Jack exhaled, stepping forward. "Fine," he said, voice even. "Let's discuss what the Barnes family is really after." Warren Barnes followed Jack and Jessica into the library, where an imposing wooden desk anchored the room. Shelves of leather-bound volumes lined the walls, the scent of aged paper and faint citrus polish in the air. Warren's gaze flicked nervously across the expensive decor before he turned his attention to Jack. Jack took a measured breath. "All right. You claim Gerald Barnes, your uncle, is interfering in my business and possibly connected to Jessica's sister's disappearance. Explain." Warren hesitated, then placed his messenger bag on a side table and withdrew a slim file folder. "Gerald invests in various real estate and private equity ventures. Years ago, he was behind a series of acquisitions that decimated lower-income neighborhoods. Some families were forced out under questionable legal tactics." Jack frowned, arms folding. "I was aware of that. At the time, I thought it was just the way the market worked, but it got messy. I pulled out, though not soon enough. Jessica's grandparents were among those who lost their property." Jessica's jaw tightened. This was the confirmation she dreaded, that her family's tragedy was fueled by greed. She forced herself to remain composed. "What about Carmen?" Warren spread out documents, old newspaper clippings, partial emails. Gerald had ties to individuals who ran predatory lending schemes and other illicit operations. It's possible Carmen got caught in that web after running away. A youth shelter in Chicago was just the first stop. I found references to suspicious accounts that might hint at forced labor or trafficking. Nothing conclusive, but enough to raise alarm bells. Jack's features hardened. "Why didn't you bring this to the authorities?" Warren's laugh was hollow. "Gerald's powerful. He has friends in high places. One wrong move, and he'd bury me and the evidence before anyone could blink. Besides, without concrete proof of a crime, the police might not act." Jessica clenched her fists. "So we have nothing but speculation." Warren offered a sad nod. "I'm afraid so, but I keep digging. I believe Carmen's path crossed with people linked to Gerald's network. If we follow the money, we might find her or at least learn what happened." A heavy silence blanketed the library. Jack walked to the window, gaze distant. "So what you're saying is Gerald could use this knowledge, your investigation, against me. If it becomes public that I was part of deals that displaced families, my reputation and philanthropic work would be destroyed. He could threaten a scandal unless I comply with his demands." Warren glanced at Jessica. "Exactly. And he'll paint Jessica as a gold digger or a liar if she tries to expose him. He'll do whatever it takes to protect himself and sabotage you." Jack faced Warren, voice low. "Why help us? You could stay out of it, avoid your uncle's wrath." Warren's eyes flickered with resolve. "I made a promise to Maria Lopez after your parents' property was lost. She confided in me. She was terrified, desperate to keep Jessica and Carmen safe. I failed her then. I refuse to fail her daughter now." Jessica's throat tightened. She remembered her mother's letter, urging her to seek the truth from Jack. Perhaps Maria had also entrusted Warren with the final piece of the puzzle. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack exhaled, crossing to Jessica's side. "We need a strategy. If Gerald holds all the cards, we must either find a trump card of our own or dismantle his power." Warren nodded. "Agreed. I have a contact, someone who can access deeper financial records. If Gerald's been funding shady operations, we'll uncover it." Jack's jaw clenched, a flicker of anger burning in his eyes. "I'll make the call to my private investigator as well. We'll combine resources. But Warren, if you cross me or Jessica—" "I won't," Warren said firmly. "We're in this together." Jessica felt tension coil in her chest. She knew a confrontation loomed, and it threatened to unearth not just Gerald's schemes, but also Jack's old misdeeds. She recalled how unwavering her mother's resentment had been toward him. Would working together truly break the cycle of harm, or would it end in heartbreak? Jack escorted Warren out, promising to meet again soon. Jessica lingered in the library, staring at the scattered documents on the desk. Voices of the past seemed to swirl around her. Her mother's pleas, her grandparents' loss, Carmen's silent footsteps vanishing into the night. The weight of it nearly pulled her under. When Jack returned, he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She turned to face him, tears threatening. "For what?" "For all of it. For not seeing the damage earlier, for not realizing how deep Gerald's corruption ran." He paused, conflict in his eyes. "And for dragging you into this world. You deserve better." Her anger softened into a weary ache. "It's not just about me anymore. Carmen could be in real danger. We need to expose Gerald." Jack nodded, resolve settling into the lines of his face. "Then we will. I promise you." A hush fell, electricity crackling between them. She found herself leaning closer, searching his gaze for sincerity. He reached to brush a strand of hair from her face, his breath catching. For a moment, it seemed they might forget the chaos around them, but the weight of secrets tugged them back to reality. Jessica stepped away, chest tight with longing and fear. Outside, a rumble of thunder punctured the quiet, darkening skies, reflecting her tangled emotions. She clutched the edges of a document, her mother's warning echoing in her mind, "Demand the truth." Now, the truth was bigger than one letter or one confession. It threatened to expose a world of hidden agendas and might just tear them all apart if they weren't careful. Heavy rain lashed against the mansion's windows that night, a storm sweeping in as if to mirror the turmoil inside. Jessica paced her guest suite, the recollections of Warren's revelations thundering through her mind. She wondered if Carmen had been trafficked or fallen into debts she couldn't escape. The images were too horrifying to dwell on, and yet ignoring them felt worse. A quiet knock on her door startled her. She opened it to find Jack, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly damp from crossing the open hallway. He studied her solemnly. "I just spoke with my investigator. He'll start digging into Gerald's financial footprints first thing in the morning." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "Thank you." The words came out softly. "And Warren? He'll be working from another angle." Jack hesitated, then added, "He's taking a risk by defying his own family. That counts for something." She let him into the room, feeling odd about the intimacy of having him there. The suite was tastefully furnished in soft creams and gold, a plush rug underfoot and a window seat overlooking the stormy gardens. Lightning illuminated their faces for a brief second. In that flash, she noticed worry etched in the lines around his eyes. "You're stressed," she observed gently. He gave a rueful smile. "That's an understatement. Gerald Barnes has been a thorn in my side for years. Now I'm facing the reality that his actions might have destroyed more families than I ever imagined. And you didn't see it back then." He shook his head, remorse evident. "I was too focused on making deals, impressing my investors. I wasn't innocent. I was simply blind. Your mother tried to warn me, but I brushed her off, trusting Gerald's version of events. I've regretted it ever since." The bitterness in his tone tugged at her heart, reminding her that he carried his own guilt. "At least you're trying to fix it now," she murmured. He stepped closer, the soft light of the bedside lamp reflecting in his eyes. "I'm no saint, Jessica. Even if we manage to bring Gerald down and find Carmen, I can't undo the pain I caused you and your family." She lifted her chin. "I've spent most of my life angry at you, even without knowing you. But I see now it's more complicated. My mother wanted me to hold you accountable, yet maybe she also wanted me to see you're not just a villain." He gently took her hand, voice almost a whisper. "What do you see then?" 1,000 conflicting feelings whirled inside her. Anxiety, curiosity, and yes, an undeniable pull toward him that she couldn't fully explain. "I see a man who's made mistakes," she said carefully. "Someone who wants to make amends but still struggles with the fallout. Someone who let ambition overshadow empathy, but who might have a genuine heart underneath." A flash of vulnerability crossed his features. Lightning flared outside again, revealing the sincerity in his eyes. "You have no idea how much I wish I could go back and change everything that hurt you." Silence stretched between them, taut yet comforting. In that charged space, her defenses wavered. She found herself leaning toward him, drawn by the warmth in his gaze. When he reached up and brushed a light thumb across her cheek, she closed her eyes, breath catching. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to fade, replaced by the pounding of her heart. His lips gently found hers in a tentative, searching kiss that spoke of longing and remorse in equal measure. A wave of conflicting emotions crashed over her, relief, fear, a spark of hope. She returned the kiss, allowing herself this fragile moment of closeness. When they broke apart, reality rushed back. She pulled away, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. I'm not sure if this is right," she whispered, tears threatening. "My mother died hating everything you stood for. My sister could still be lost because of what your deals triggered." He lowered his head, regret flooding his eyes. "I understand. I won't force you into anything. We can't ignore the past. But let's not deny the possibility that something good could come from all this." She swallowed hard, mind spinning. "I need time to think." He nodded, stepping back toward the door. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As he left, thunder roared across the sky, rattling the window. Jessica stood in the silent room, heart racing, replaying that moment of connection. She wanted to trust him, to believe that his remorse was real and that something more beautiful could emerge from the wreckage of their history. But the shadows of Carmen's disappearance and her mother's bitterness clung to her, warning her not to lose herself in a man who had once been part of the problem. She peered out the window at the wind-tossed trees, lightning illuminating a landscape drenched in turmoil. A whisper of possibility lingered on her lips, the echo of his kiss. She let out a shaky breath. However stormy her feelings, she couldn't deny that her heart had shifted. The question now was whether that shift would lead to healing or deeper heartbreak. By morning, the storm clouds had cleared, leaving the sky scrubbed clean and vivid blue. Yet the tension inside the mansion remained. Jessica awoke early, still tingling with the memory of Jack's touch. She tried to focus on practical matters, her meeting with Warren, the investigator's progress, but the echo of his gentle kiss kept invading her thoughts. After breakfast, Jack joined her in the sunlit dining room, where silverware gleamed on a polished table. He offered a soft good morning and sat across from her, carefully avoiding direct eye contact. She wondered if he, too, replayed their exchange in the guest suite all night. When the house phone rang, Jack excused himself to answer it in the adjacent lounge. Jessica could hear muffled tones of exasperation. After a few minutes, he re-entered the dining room, lines of worry bracketing his mouth. "That was my investigator. He's found something." She straightened. "About Gerald?" He nodded grimly. "Yes, a pattern of funds routed through shell companies tied to old real estate acquisitions, including the properties your grandparents lost. There's also a suspicious link to a group operating in Chicago around the time your sister disappeared." Jessica's stomach twisted. "Does that mean—" Jack took a seat beside her, voice subdued. "We don't know yet, but it's the strongest lead we've had. If Gerald was funding that group, they might have lured vulnerable teens. Carmen could have been among them." A wave of nausea and hope flooded her. "If that's true, we can expose him. We can bring in the police, right?" Jack hesitated, jaw tightening. "We need more solid evidence first." "We only have data from the investigators' preliminary hacking and cross-referencing. If we go public now, Gerald will destroy the evidence or bury it behind legal walls." A familiar frustration rose inside her. "Then what's the plan?" He rubbed the back of his neck, conflict flickering in his eyes. "We need direct testimony or records from inside Gerald's operation. Warren might have a way in. If we move too soon, we risk losing everything. Also, Gerald could retaliate against me, you, or Warren." Jessica recalled Warren's warning about Gerald's ruthlessness. It felt like they were walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. She rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of too many decisions. "We can't just do nothing." Jack placed a reassuring hand on hers. "I'd never suggest that. We just have to be strategic." His eyes lifted, meeting hers for the first time that morning. "I won't stop until Carmen's safe and Gerald is held accountable. I promise." A hint of warmth touched her chest, recalling their shared vulnerability the previous night. She nodded, letting his hand linger a moment longer than necessary before pulling away. "Thank you," she whispered. That afternoon, Warren arrived, wearing a nervous frown. He spoke hurriedly once they were behind closed doors in the library. "Gerald suspects we're onto him. He confronted me this morning, demanding I back off. I denied everything, but he's not convinced." Jack crossed his arms. "Our investigator found a trail connecting him to some very dark activities. If we can confirm it, he's done." Warren glanced at Jessica, hesitation in his eyes. "It's not just about Gerald facing consequences. If he feels cornered, he might tip off whatever organization has Carmen. If they still have her, she'll be endangered even more. We need to proceed carefully, or we could lose the chance to save her." The weight of those words pressed on Jessica. "You're sure she's still alive?" Warren exhaled. "I can't be certain, but there's a chance. And that's worth everything, isn't it?" Her throat constricted. She pictured the last time she saw Carmen, a stubborn teenager with wide, fearful eyes, vanishing into the night. She had clung to hope for years, never fully believing her sister was gone for good. Now that hope flared, painful and urgent. Jack caught her gaze. "We'll proceed with caution. If Gerald plans to confront me directly, I can stall him, make him believe I'm reconsidering a deal. That might buy us time to gather final proof." Warren nodded. "And I'll keep digging into my uncle's associates. One of them must have direct knowledge about Carmen's disappearance." Jessica rose abruptly from the armchair, nerves jangling. "I can't just sit around. There has to be something I can do." Warren offered a sympathetic look. "Focus on staying safe. If Gerald sees you as a threat, he might come after you directly." her jaw set in determination. "I won't hide in a corner." Jack walked around the desk, laying a hand on her shoulder. "I understand how you feel, but if anything happened to you—" His voice caught, though he quickly steadied it. "We need to protect you for Carmen's sake, too." She swallowed hard. The swirling tension of danger, the lingering tenderness between her and Jack, the uncertain fate of her sister, it all felt like a storm waiting to break. Outside, the day was bright, but the sense of foreboding pressed on her chest. She forced a nod. "All right, I'll stay on alert." She locked eyes with Jack, her voice carrying a tremor. "Just promise me we won't wait too long." "We won't," he vowed. Warren quickly gathered his files and prepared to leave, anxiety etched in every line of his face. Jessica followed him to the door, mind reeling. The lines had been drawn, the stakes higher than ever before. As Jack escorted Warren out, Jessica stood by the tall windows, fists clenched. The horizon was clear, but inside she sensed a storm far more dangerous than any raging winds. She braced herself, certain that the worst was yet to come. That night, Jessica could barely sleep, consumed by the possibility that Carmen might be one step away from rescue, or lost forever if they failed. In the early morning hours, she tiptoed downstairs, finding the library lights already on. She entered to see Jack hunched over a stack of documents, eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness. He looked up, forcing a half-smile. "Couldn't sleep." She shook her head, stepping closer. "You haven't gone to bed at all, have you?" He pushed a hand through his hair. "My investigator keeps sending new fragments of information. I've been piecing them together." He tapped a page filled with bank transfers and cryptic notes. "It paints a clearer picture of Gerald's involvement." She leaned in, reading the data. The sums were enormous, shuffled across multiple accounts. "And you think some of these funds were used to finance criminal activities?" He nodded gravely. "Nothing proves Carmen was part of it, but the timing is suspicious. If Gerald was fueling an operation that recruited or coerced vulnerable teens, your sister could have been taken in." Her breath shuddered. "We have to act, Jack." He set the paper down, exhaustion etched in his face. "I plan to meet Gerald today. I'll pretend to reconsider his development proposal. Maybe I can corner him into revealing something, or at least distract him so our team can finish gathering the last bits of evidence." Jessica's heart clenched. "That sounds dangerous. What if he suspects you're stalling?" Jack's gaze hardened. "He might, but if I don't do it, he'll sense we're up to something and close ranks." She placed a hand on his arm. "Please, be careful." His fingers grazed hers, lingering. "I will. In the meantime, stay here. My security detail will keep watch. If you see or hear anything unusual, call me immediately." The morning wore on, tension thick in every hallway. Jessica paced her suite, wishing she could do more than wait. She texted Warren for updates, but received only short replies. "Stand by, checking leads." Each minute felt like an hour, the clock mocking her impatience. By early afternoon, a knock startled her. She opened the door to find Denise, looking anxious. "Miss Lopez, there's someone at the gate asking for you. A woman. She says it's urgent." Jessica's pulse soared. "Did she give a name?" Denise shook her head. "Just said she's an old friend." Confusion tangled in Jessica's mind. Could it be Carmen? She almost sprinted down the corridor, but remembered Jack's caution. The risk of a trap loomed large. Still, if there was any chance it was her sister, she couldn't ignore it. She reached the security station near the front entrance, where two guards stood alert. Outside the heavy iron gates, a slender figure was partially visible. Jessica approached the monitor, heart hammering. The woman appeared older than Carmen would be, with short hair and a strained expression. Jessica pressed the intercom. "Who are you?" Static crackled. "My name's Lila. I knew Carmen in Chicago." I've been searching for you. Please, let me in. A swirl of shock spun Jessica's thoughts. If this woman truly knew Carmen, she might be a vital lead. She also might be a pawn of Gerald's. Anxiety raged in Jessica's chest, but the hope of learning about her sister outweighed caution. She told the guard, "Let her in, but keep an eye out." Within minutes, the gate swung open and Leela stepped onto the property, gaze darting nervously. Jessica met her in the courtyard, arms folded protectively. "Tell me how you know my sister." Leela swallowed hard. "I was in the same shelter with her, in Chicago. We became friends. When she ran again, she told me she didn't trust the shelter staff. She believed someone was using girls to pay off debts. I tried to stop her from leaving, but she disappeared." Jessica's throat constricted. "Do you know if she's alive?" Lila's expression flickered with uncertainty. "I heard rumors she got caught up with some dangerous people." "I'm sorry, I don't know for sure, but if you want to find her, you need to look into a man named Hank Fisher. He was the link between the shelter and whoever funded it." Jessica's mind raced. "Hank Fisher? Is he still in Chicago?" "I think so," Lila said, scanning the manicured lawn uneasily. "Look, I shouldn't be here. People might be watching. I just owed it to Carmen to help after all this time." Suddenly, a screech of tires on the street outside made Lila flinch. She looked panicked, as if expecting someone to charge in at any second. Jessica grabbed her hand. "Come inside. You'll be safer." Lila shook her head. "No, I can't stay. If they find out I talked to you, it's over for me. Just find Hank Fisher." "That's all I can say." She pulled free and sprinted back toward the gate, ignoring Jessica's calls to wait. Jessica watched in helpless disbelief as Lila vanished into a rideshare car that roared away, leaving a swirl of dust. The guards rushed to Jessica's side, but it was too late. Lila was gone, and so was any chance of immediate answers. She clutched her phone, trembling. This was a breakthrough, yet also another heartbreak. Carmen had been lured into something far darker than Jessica had imagined. Hank Fisher might be the key to saving her, if she was still alive. As Jessica dialed Jack's number, her gaze drifted to the vast estate around her. So much power, so many resources, and still the path to the truth felt fraught with danger. The phone rang unanswered, fueling her anxiety. She wrapped her arms around herself, storm clouds forming once again in the distance. Every instinct told her the confrontation with Gerald and the fight for Carmen was barreling toward a fateful climax. Whether they were ready for it or not, the moment of truth could not be delayed much longer. Jessica's phone finally buzzed to life just as she entered the mansion's foyer. Jack's voice on the other end was tight with urgency. "I just left my meeting with Gerald. Where are you?" "Home," she answered, pressing a hand to her racing heart. "A woman showed up claiming she knew Carmen. She mentioned a name, Hank Fisher in Chicago, something about a shelter being involved in trafficking or forced debts." Jack cursed under his breath. "I knew Gerald was dirty, but this is worse than I thought. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, though her voice shook, but she wouldn't come inside. She was terrified. "We need to find Hank Fisher. He may be the key to locating Carmen." Jack paused, the sound of traffic in the background. "I'm on my way back now. Don't leave until I get there. I have news from Gerald, and it changes everything." She hung up with a knot in her gut. Gerald clearly wasn't letting go of his leverage. Now there was a direct link between his world and the group that might have taken Carmen. Jessica paced the marble floors, replaying Lila's desperate face. The staff watched her with cautious eyes, aware of the tension thickening by the hour. When Jack finally arrived, he stormed through the front door, coat damp from a lingering drizzle outside. His expression was grim. "Gerald hinted that if I don't agree to his proposal, some shady high-rise project built on forcibly acquired land, he'll release incriminating evidence linking me to past evictions." He raked a hand through his hair. He's also got some hold over certain politicians, so if I go public accusing him of trafficking, they'll likely bury my claims. Jessica clenched her fists. So he wants you to cooperate, or he'll destroy your reputation. Jack nodded. Not just mine. He threatened to twist the narrative and paint you as a blackmailer. He has resources to fabricate whatever story he wants. Her eyes flashed with anger. That monster will do anything to maintain power. Jack's shoulders sagged. He demanded an answer by tomorrow, sign his contract or face a brutal smear campaign. Jessica felt her stomach lurch. Then we have to move fast. Warren said he could gather enough evidence to sink Gerald, but we need more time. Jack led her into the study, where his investigator waited, a middle-aged man in a nondescript suit, laptop open on a mahogany table. We're close to tracking a money trail that ties Gerald to a suspicious group in Chicago, the investigator explained. But these people are experts at covering their tracks. We need a final piece of data that could link them to a known criminal network. What if Hank Fisher is that missing piece? Jessica asked, leaning in. He might have records or personal knowledge of how they lured Carmen. If we find him, we could link Gerald directly to trafficking. Jack exchanged a glance with the investigator, who shrugged. It's possible, but we need to locate Fisher. I'll see if my contacts can pull addresses, phone numbers, anything. Jessica's nerves were frayed. She perched on the edge of a leather armchair, bouncing her foot in anxious rhythm. I'll go to Chicago if I have to. Jack's voice hardened. Not alone. We'll send a team. She started to protest but saw the fear in his eyes. Fine, just hurry. They broke their huddle when the housekeeper announced Warren's arrival. He looked more tense than ever, shoulders rigid beneath his jacket. Gerald is on the warpath, he reported, glancing at Jack. He's threatened to cut me off entirely. If I keep aiding you, he'll make sure I'm bankrupt. Jack studied Warren's face. Why not walk away? You have no reason to lose everything for us. Warren inhaled sharply. Because Carmen's plight has haunted me for years, and because I owe Maria Lopez a debt I can never repay. Jessica felt the sting of tears. You really cared about my mom. He nodded solemnly. She was the bravest person I knew. When no one else would stand against exploitation, she did, alone. If Gerald's network played a part in Carmen's fate, I won't rest until he's exposed. Jack cleared his throat, reluctant admiration in his eyes. Then we proceed. My investigator will find Hank Fisher. Once we have that link, we'll confront Gerald publicly or give the evidence to law enforcement. Warren set his jaw. We have to be careful. Gerald could skip town or destroy documents if he senses we're close. Jack clasped his hands behind his back, pacing. He gave me until tomorrow to sign his contract. I'll stall him, pretend to consider it. That should buy us at least a day or two. Jessica noticed the deep circles under Jack's eyes. Guilt gnawed at her for the weight he bore, partly from his own past mistakes, partly from trying to fix what seemed irreparable. Still, her sister's life could hinge on their success. She forced a steady voice. We can do this if we work together. The group broke apart, each retreating to separate corners of the mansion to make calls or scour files. Jessica spent the rest of the evening glued to her phone, waiting for any sign that Hank Fisher had been found. Hours trickled by, her pulse pounding every time the device buzzed. Near midnight, the investigator sent a terse message. Possible lead on Fisher's location in Chicago. Will confirm by morning. Relief warred with dread. The realization sinking in that tomorrow could bring them one step closer to answers or plunge them deeper into Gerald's traps. Jessica closed her eyes, remembering Lila's warning. She prayed this time they weren't too late. Across the silent mansion, she sensed everyone bracing for the final confrontation. The sound of her heart seemed to echo against the ornate walls. the only reminder that hope still lived in a place now consumed by the shadows of a past no one could fully outrun. Morning dawned with a bleak sky, grey clouds smothering the sun. Jessica woke early, skipping breakfast to join Jack in the study. The investigator was already on a video call, files spread across the table. Warren paced near a window, phone in hand. The urgency in the air felt suffocating. Clearing his throat, the investigator turned to Jessica. "We confirmed that Hank Fisher is in Chicago, near the South Side. He's been under the radar for years, working odd jobs. Looks like he's had run-ins with the law, assault, petty theft." Warren frowned. "Could be dangerous." Jessica's voice was resolute. "I need to talk to him face to face. If he knows anything about Carmen, that's worth the risk." Jack closed his laptop, eyes bloodshot. "I'll make the arrangements. We'll fly out as soon as possible." She shook her head. "Gerald wants your answer today. If you skip town, he'll know something's off." Jack's jaw tightened. "I can stall him a bit longer, maybe tell him I need to finalize details with my lawyers, but he'll be suspicious if I disappear." "Then let me go," Jessica insisted, heart thumping. "Warren and I can handle it. Your investigator can come along. You stay here, keep Gerald distracted." Warren nodded agreement, though his face paled slightly. "We'll be careful." Jack met Jessica's gaze, waging an internal battle. Finally, he exhaled. "Okay, but you'll have security. I'll arrange a charter flight, a hotel, whatever you need. I'm trusting you to stay safe." A flicker of warmth stirred in her chest, recalling the night they'd shared that fragile moment of closeness. She laid a hand on his arm. "I'll be fine. We're doing this for Carmen, for your redemption too." He pressed his lips into a thin line, voice hushed. "Just come back in one piece." Within hours, Jessica, Warren, and the investigator boarded a small private plane. Jessica sat by the window, watching the city's skyline shrink below. Her heart pounded, adrenaline coursing. This was the closest she'd ever come to finding Carmen, yet the stakes were higher than she'd imagined. Every mile traveled felt like a countdown to a confrontation with the truth, or another dead end. They touched down in Chicago beneath a brooding sky. A black SUV waited on the tarmac, and soon they were winding through the city's southern neighborhoods, rows of brick buildings, graffiti-splashed walls, broken windows. Jessica stared out at the passing scenery, feeling an odd mix of dread and nostalgia. She had never been here, but this was where her sister once wandered, alone and desperate. The investigator, riding in the front seat, directed the driver to a dilapidated block. Fisher's last known address is an old warehouse turned squat. He might be there or in a nearby bar he frequents. Warren glanced at Jessica. "You sure you want to do this face to face?" She swallowed hard, summoning courage. "He needs to see I'm real, that this is personal. Otherwise, he might blow us off." They parked on a potholed street. Two security men stepped out first, scanning the area. Jessica followed, pulling her jacket tight against the chill. The smell of stale beer and rotting garbage hit her nostrils. A group of onlookers lingered near a chain-link fence, eyeing their expensive SUV with suspicion. The investigator led them to a grimy side door marked with faded spray paint. He knocked, then banged harder when no one answered. Finally, the door cracked open to reveal a wiry man with sunken cheeks, a cigarette dangling from chapped lips. His gaze swept over them with guarded hostility. "Yeah, we're looking for Hank Fisher," the investigator said calmly. The man smirked. "Who's asking?" Jessica stepped forward, ignoring Warren's warning glance. "I need to ask him about Carmen Lopez. It's urgent." At the mention of Carmen, the man's eyes narrowed. He spat out the cigarette. "Why should I care?" Jessica took a trembling breath. "Because she might still be in danger. Please, if Hank can help." Before she could finish, the man jerked the door wider. "Wait here." He disappeared inside, leaving them uncertain whether he'd gone to fetch Fisher or call backup. Several tense minutes passed. Jessica's fingers twitched with nerves, Warren maintaining a ready stance behind her. Finally, footsteps echoed in the corridor, and a tall figure emerged, middle-aged, face lined with hard living. He wore a dirty cap pulled low over sharp eyes that glinted with distrust. "You're looking for me," he said, voice gravelly. "Hank Fisher?" asked the investigator. He gave a curt nod. "Depends who's asking." Jessica inhaled shakily. "I'm Jessica Lopez. My sister, Carmen, may have crossed paths with you a few years back." Fisher's shoulders stiffened. "Why come to me?" Warren stepped in, tone level. "Because we know you had connections to a ring that coerced teens at a Chicago shelter. If Carmen was part of that, we need answers." Fisher's gaze shifted warily around the group. "Yeah, I knew some of those kids, and I know who paid to keep that pipeline running." His eyes flicked to Jessica. "You sure you want the truth? Might not like what you hear?" Her pulse thundered in her ears. "I have to know." "Please." Fisher scratched his stubble, glancing down the alley. "Not here. This place has ears. Follow me." They followed him through a maze of stacked crates and grimy corridors, the smell of mildew thick. After navigating a narrow stairwell, they reached a small, windowless room lit by a single naked bulb. Fisher gestured for them to sit on battered metal chairs. He paced for a moment, then turned to Jessica, arms crossed. "Your sister. I remember her. Fiery, but broken inside. She was in debt, or so she thought, owed money to men who funded the shelter. She wanted out, but they wouldn't let her go so easy." Jessica's heart lurched. "Where is she now?" He spat on the floor. "I don't know. Last I saw, they were carting her off in a van. The boss said she'd work off what she owed. Could have been anywhere." Tears burned Jessica's eyes. "Who was the boss?" Fisher's gaze darkened. "He was funded by some corporate bigwig. I never learned his name. But the money filtered through middlemen, one named Barnes. Could be your sister got shipped off to another state." A crushing sense of desperation filled Jessica. This confirmed Gerald's involvement, but gave no definitive location for Carmen. Warren clenched his jaw, frustration etched in his stance. The investigator's phone buzzed, but he ignored it, focusing on Fisher. "We need proof. Records, receipts, anything that ties that Barnes to the operation." Fisher looked wary. "I've got some files stashed, enough to ruin their day. But if they find out I helped you, I'm dead. You got to offer me some kind of protection." Jessica's voice shook. "We will. Anything you need." His eyes locked on hers, searching. "They said your sister was trouble, kept trying to run or help others escape. They might have punished her for that." Jessica's stomach twisted painfully. She tried to speak, but only a strangled sound emerged. Warren jumped in. "If we get this evidence, can we find leads on where Carmen might be now?" Fisher lifted a shoulder, uncertain. "Possibly, but it won't be pretty." Outside, thunder rumbled once more, as if the storm had followed them from the mansion. Jessica felt a darkness closing in, a grim recognition that Carmen's situation might be far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Yet a fierce spark of hope remained. This was the most concrete lead she'd had in years. She steadied herself, looking Fisher in the eye. "Please, whatever it takes, help us finish what my mother started." Fisher led them down another hallway to a hidden storage room, rummaging through a dented metal cabinet until he pulled out a ragged manila folder. "Had this stashed for insurance," he muttered, tossing it onto a crate. "Never thought I'd need it. Now I guess it's my ticket out of this mess." Jessica, Warren, and the investigator crowded around. Inside the folder were photocopied receipts, ledger pages referencing payments for transport and operational fees. Some pages bore partial letterheads linking them to a shell company that matched Gerald's financial footprint. Jessica's pulse hammered. This was damning evidence, if they could link it conclusively to Gerald. Warren glanced nervously at Fisher. We'll need the originals too, to be sure. Scans can be disputed. Gerald could claim they're forged. Fisher let out a mirthless laugh. That's all I got. Originals disappeared after the feds raided a connected stash house. Trust me, these copies are all that's left. Jessica's throat tightened. They needed more, but maybe this was enough to start. She touched the worn edges of the folder. What about Carmen specifically? Are there documents with her name? Fisher shook his head, gaze flitting away. Not that I ever saw. These guys weren't exactly big on official paperwork for their merchandise. If she's alive, she's off the grid. A chill ran through Jessica at the word merchandise. She inhaled slowly, fighting anger and despair. Then how do we track her? Fisher scratched his beard. I heard rumors a year or two back. Some operation moved to the West Coast, Seattle area. Could be that's where they relocated people who owed debts. But it's a rumor, nothing more. Warren looked to the investigator. If we can match these documents to Gerald's shell accounts and track new activity in Seattle, we might get somewhere. The investigator nodded, phone in hand, as he snapped pictures of the folder. I'll run it through my database. We'll see if anything lines up. Jessica glanced at Fisher. Will you come with us? Testify, or at least talk to the authorities? He recoiled. No way. I stick my neck out any further. I'm a dead man. You want my help? Get me protection. Witness relocation, new identity. Otherwise, I'm gone. Before Jessica could protest, the investigator stepped in. We can arrange something if you provide enough credible testimony to take to law enforcement, but you'll have to trust us. Fisher studied the group, torn. Finally, he swallowed. I'll consider it. But first, I want to see results. No sense signing my own death warrant if you can't guarantee I'll be safe. Jessica nodded, her voice subdued. We'll do our best. She gently took the folder, hugging it to her chest as though it contained Carmen's soul. Suddenly, a phone rang. Warren dug his out, grimacing. It's Jack! Jessica's heart lurched. She signaled for Warren to answer as she stepped away, pressing a hand to her temple. Her nerves felt like frayed wires, threatening to snap at any moment. Warren spoke quietly for a moment, then handed the phone to her. He wants to talk to you. She put the phone to her ear. Jack? His voice came through muffled but urgent. Jessica, where are you? We have a serious problem. Gerald found out you're in Chicago. My guess is he's connecting the dots. He's demanding I sign the contract tonight, or he'll release damaging documents against both of us. She closed her eyes. We found Fisher. We have partial proof that ties Gerald to the trafficking operation, but it's not enough to locate Carmen or convict Gerald outright. We need more time. Jack exhaled in frustration. We're running out of it. If I don't comply soon, he'll bury us. The board of my company is pressuring me, too. Some of them are aligned with Gerald behind the scenes. They'll turn on me if a scandal breaks. Jessica bit her lip, turning her back on Fisher for privacy. Then let them turn. Gerald is evil. You can't sign his contract and fund another wave of forced evictions. His voice dropped. I know, but think about your safety. If this evidence isn't strong enough, he'll spin it against you. You'll be the one facing legal threats, or worse. She glanced at the battered folder in her arms. I'm not giving up. Fisher might help us. We just need to persuade him to testify or hand over more leads. Be careful, Jack repeated, voice laced with worry. I'll try to stall Gerald again. When can you come back? Tonight, if we can finish here, she replied, swallowing her anxiety. Then we'll figure out our next move. Please hurry, Jack said softly, lingering on the line. I can't do this without you. Heat filled Jessica's cheeks. She found herself wishing she could bury her face in his chest and forget the danger swirling around them, but there was no escape. She ended the call and turned to Warren, who studied her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "She's right," the investigator said quietly. "We can't force Fisher to cooperate. But maybe these documents are enough to threaten Gerald with exposure, force him to back down, or at least buy us time." Jessica squeezed her eyes shut. "But that won't guarantee we find Carmen. We need a direct lead on her whereabouts." The small group conferred with Fisher once more, coaxing details about any West Coast ties. He scribbled a few half-remembered names on a scrap of paper, locations of sketchy bars, possible contacts, rumors passed among those in debt. His knowledge was haphazard, incomplete, yet it felt like the only lifeline they had. Late afternoon light filtered through high windows. Warren placed a hand on Jessica's shoulder. "We have to go. Gerald is closing in. Jack can't hold him off forever." She nodded, dread prickling her skin. "Right, let's pack up." She faced Fisher, offering a hint of desperation. "Thank you. If you remember anything else, please contact us." He shrugged, eyeing the folder. "Just keep me out of the crossfire." Then he turned, vanishing back into the shadowy corridors. Armed with the scrawled names and the damning documents, Jessica hurried out with Warren and the investigator. The drive back to the airport was tense, every stoplight feeling like a potential trap. By the time they reached the plane, the sky was darkening with fresh clouds. Jessica paused, looking back at the Chicago skyline. In her mind, Carmen was out there somewhere, possibly even farther away, drifting in a life of fear and debt. The thought made her chest ache. She tightened her grip on the folder. "Hold on, Carmen," she prayed silently. "We're coming for you, no matter what." As the jet engines roared, lifting them into the stormy air, Jessica felt the looming confrontation with Gerald pressing ever closer. The puzzle pieces were aligning, but each new discovery revealed a deeper layer of corruption. A single false step might cost them everything, yet a fierce resolve burned in her chest. She would see this through, for her mother's memory, for her grandparents, for Carmen, and in spite of herself for the man waiting on the other side of this battle. Jack paced in the mansion's grand foyer, the overhead chandelier casting anxious shadows on the marble floor. He kept checking his watch, nerves as taut as a piano wire. Jessica, Warren, and the investigator were due back hours ago, but delays dogged their flight. When they finally arrived, well past midnight, he hurried out to greet them, relief and tension wrestling in his chest. Jessica stepped from the car, clutching a worn folder and wearing an exhausted expression. He pulled her into a quick embrace. She sagged against him, then caught herself, stepping back. "We have evidence, but it's not conclusive enough to nail Gerald. He's threatened you too, right?" Jack nodded grimly. "He's been calling non-stop, wants my signature by morning. I told him I need a final review with my legal team at 8 a.m. Warren and the investigator exchanged worried looks. Warren handed Jack the folder. "Fisher gave us partial proof that Gerald financed trafficking through a shell company. If we threaten to expose him, it might buy more time." Jack stared at the documents, scanning them with a frown. "And Carmen?" Jessica swallowed hard. "He doesn't know for sure. But there's a rumor she might have been moved to the West Coast. We have a few scraps of info, nothing solid." His gaze flicked to her trembling hands. "We'll find her, Jessica. I won't stop until we do." She gave a weary nod. "Right now, Gerald's the immediate threat. If he smears you, it ruins your ability to help. If we remain silent, he bulldozes more families and keeps Carmen hidden." The investigator cleared his throat. "We propose a bluff. Threaten Gerald with partial release of these documents. Demand he back off or risk a scandal. We don't show all our cards yet. We just let him see enough to realize we can sink him," Warren added. "Then we secure a safe channel to the authorities, hand over the evidence, and coordinate a sting operation. If all goes well, Gerald goes down. Jack rubbed his forehead. "And if it doesn't go well, he'll turn every resource he has against us. My company, your credibility, Jessica's safety, it'll all be at risk." The group stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down. Jessica spoke softly. "It's time we confront him head-on. No more running." Jack exhaled, meeting her gaze. "Agreed, you, Warren, and the investigator lock down the details. I'll meet Gerald in my office at 8. We'll see if he blinks first." They dispersed to begin the frantic planning. Jessica followed Jack into his study, where he flung off his jacket and loosened his tie. His usual calm composure cracked, revealing anxiety in the set of his jaw. "Do you think this will work?" he asked, voice rough. She looked at the folder on the desk, shoulders tense. "I hope so. I'm terrified it won't. But we have no choice." His eyes roamed her face. "You're exhausted. Get some sleep while you can." She nodded, but didn't move. A question lingered in her mind, tangling with the swirl of exhaustion. Could they still have a chance beyond the crisis? She saw the same question in his gaze. After a moment of heavy silence, he reached for her hand. "Thank you for believing in me enough to fight by my side. I never imagined someone like you would—" She placed a finger against his lips, stopping the words. Emotions surged in her chest. "Don't," she whispered, eyes brimming. "We can't think about anything else right now." His eyes closed, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "You're right." She withdrew her hand, stepping back. "We'll settle the rest when this is over." Her voice trembled with a mix of longing and dread. She offered a last, lingering look before leaving him standing in the study, tension radiating from his every limb. Sleep proved elusive. Jessica lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the storm of thoughts raging. Memories of Carmen, fear for what might have happened, and the echo of Jack's warm presence all collided in her mind. Eventually, dawn light crept through the curtains, dragging her into a day she both dreaded and needed to face. At 7:30, the household was already abuzz. Warren conferred with the investigator over secure phone lines, finalizing the plan. Jack dressed in a charcoal grey suit, features grimly determined. Jessica wore a simple blouse and slacks, wanting no distractions from the confrontation ahead. As they all gathered by the front door, Jack turned to Jessica, voice hushed. "Stay here. I can't focus if I'm worried Gerald will try something with you in the same building. Let the security team protect you." She clenched her jaw, wanting to protest, but logic won out. "Fine. But call the second something happens." He brushed a hand against her cheek, then cleared his throat and stepped away, a silent farewell, unspoken between them. Warren and the investigator joined him in the waiting town car. Jessica stood on the mansion's steps, heart hammering as she watched them drive off into the city. The moment had arrived. Gerald Barnes would either cave to their threat or unleash a retaliation that could destroy them all. Jessica exhaled shakily, stepping back inside. "Hold on," she told herself. "This is for Carmen. There's no turning back." Outside, the sky threatened rain again, as though nature itself sensed the approaching tempest. Jessica closed her eyes, whispering a fervent wish that they would emerge victorious, and that her sister, wherever she was, might still be alive to see that victory. Gerald Barnes settled into a plush leather chair in Jack's top-floor office, his tailored suit radiating power. Jack observed him from behind the wide desk, maintaining a cool composure that belied the thunderous anxiety within. Warren and the investigator lingered near the door, quietly prepared for whatever came next. Gerald surveyed the space with a slow, patronizing smile. "Quite a fortress you have here, Powell. Must be nice to conduct business at such heights." Jack returned a tight nod. "I find a clear view helps one see all angles." Gerald's gaze flicked to Warren. "My dear nephew, You've aligned yourself with the wrong side." His tone dripped with contempt. "But I'm not surprised. You always were the sentimental one." Warren bristled but kept silent. Jack tapped a pen on the desk. "I assume you have the contract. Let's see it." Gerald produced a slim folder. "A revised version, more beneficial to everyone involved. Once you sign, we can move forward with the development. You'll profit handsomely, assuming you still care about profits." Jack took the folder, skimming it. "Profit from destroying entire communities. I'm not interested in a repeat of old mistakes." Gerald's lip curled. "What a noble stance. But we both know you're in no position to moralize. One word from me, and your philanthropic facade crumbles. The media will learn how many families you displaced, and that you're harboring a certain Ms. Lopez, who's been, shall we say, exploiting your generosity." Warren tensed, fists clenched. Jack's grip on the folder tightened. "Don't speak her name again," he warned, voice low. Gerald's chuckle was soft, cold. "Touched a nerve, have I? Perhaps it's more than generosity. Perhaps it's something else entirely. Regardless, sign the contract, or I unleash the files." "The choice is yours." Jack forced a steady breath. "Actually, I have files of my own." He slid a second folder across the desk. "Go ahead, take a look." Gerald's smug expression faltered. He opened the folder, scanning the photocopies of Fisher's documents, payment ledgers, partial evidence of trafficking ties. His eyes flicked back up. "This is nonsense. Forged. You think you can blackmail me with scribbles?" Jack shrugged. "We can let the police and the courts decide if they're scribbles. I have more, including testimonies that would tie you to a network exploiting runaways. Considering your political connections, a scandal like this might be quite damaging." Gerald's face reddened. "You wouldn't dare." Jack leaned forward. "Try me, because if you make good on your threat, all of this goes public. Even if you discredit me, these documents will surface. Certain media outlets would love a story about a billionaire's partner funding trafficking rings." Silence crackled. Warren exchanged a glance with the investigator, both poised to react if Gerald turned violent. Slowly, Gerald set the folder down, his jaw working. "You're bluffing. Those copies aren't nearly enough to hold up in court." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you sweating?" "You know there's more where that came from." A bead of perspiration slipped along Gerald's temple. He forced a sneer. "You think you can outmaneuver me? I've got decades of experience dealing with pests. I can swat you away." Jack stood, pressing both hands on the desk. "Go ahead and try. I have nothing left to lose if you ruin my reputation. But you, Gerald, you'll lose your entire empire. Every crooked deal exposed." "Are you willing to gamble on that?" Gerald's stare bored into him. The tension in the room felt like a string about to snap. At last, Gerald let out a bitter laugh. "You want to play hero, Powell? Fine. You might force me to back off this deal, but that won't change your past. You'll always be complicit." Jack's stomach twisted, but he held his ground. "I can live with my mistakes, as long as I'm not making more of them. Now walk away from this project, from threatening Jessica Lopez, from everything you've built on corruption, or we release these files." Gerald glowered, weighing his options. Finally, he flung the folder onto the desk, eyes flaring with contempt. "You haven't heard the last of this, or from me." He rose sharply, adjusting his tie. "Next time, you won't catch me off guard." Warren swallowed hard, stepping aside to let Gerald pass. The older man stalked toward the door, then paused, looking back at Jack with a thin smile. "And if you think Ms. Lopez is off limits, you're mistaken. She'd better watch her step. People in her position sometimes disappear." Jack's gut twisted, fear and fury flaring simultaneously. He forced himself not to lunge across the desk. "Stay away from her," he growled. Gerald smirked, then swept out, the door slamming behind him. An oppressive silence fell. Jack sank into his chair, exhaling shakily. Warren and the investigator exchanged troubled looks. "That wasn't exactly a victory," Warren muttered. "He's backing off the immediate threat, but he'll regroup." Jack closed his eyes. "I know, but at least we bought ourselves time. We can finalize the evidence, get law enforcement on our side. If he tries anything, we'll be ready." His voice wavered, betraying the adrenaline crash. "We have to warn Jessica." He dialed the mansion's line, heart pounding. Jessica picked up immediately. Her voice quivered with tension. "What happened?" He hesitated, mind racing with the memory of Gerald's parting threat. "Gerald, back down for now," he managed. "But he's furious. We're not safe yet. We need to keep you protected." Jessica's exhale crackled through the phone. "Thank God you're okay. Come back. We'll figure out our next move." Jack found himself nodding, as if she could see him. "On my way." He ended the call and stood, nodding to Warren and the investigator. "Let's go." As they exited the office, each step felt heavier than the last. Gerald might have retreated, but the lines were drawn in stone. The battle wasn't over. It had only escalated to a more dangerous stage. Outside, dark clouds choked the sky, promising another deluge. Jack walked beneath them, uncertain whether this was merely the calm before the storm's final fury. In his pocket, he clutched the evidence that had temporarily halted Gerald's plans. Yet the real question burned in his mind. Where is Carmen, and how far would Gerald go to keep her hidden? He stepped into the waiting car, determined to reach Jessica's side. No matter what it cost him, he refused to abandon the fight. "Let the storm come," he thought, gazing at the roiling sky. "We'll stand together." Morning light broke through the mansion's windows in thin, uncertain strands. Jessica stood at the top of the grand staircase, exhausted but resolute. She had barely slept after the tense confrontation with Gerald. Jack, Warren, and the investigator had returned late, hearts pounding from the near clash, and they spent hours poring over the new evidence from Fisher. Now the house felt strangely calm, as though everyone were too drained to continue panicking. Jessica descended the stairs, finding Jack in the foyer. He wore a rumpled shirt and tie, eyes rimmed with fatigue. He glanced up, relief flooding his features when he saw her. "How are you holding up?" he asked softly, voice still rough from tension. She offered a wan smile. "Tired, but I'm okay." "What's our next move?" Jack gestured for her to follow him into the library, where Warren sipped a strong cup of coffee. The investigator was on a laptop, scanning pages of notes. Stacks of documents lined the table. Outside, the sky looked ready to storm again. Warren set down his mug. "Gerald's quiet for now, but that won't last. We need to press our advantage. If we can coordinate with law enforcement or a federal agency, we can force Gerald's hand." The investigator spoke without looking away from his screen. "I've reached out to a trusted contact in the Justice Department. If we provide enough evidence tying Gerald to a multi-state trafficking ring, they'll open an investigation." Jessica's chest clenched with both hope and dread. "And Carmen?" A hush fell. Jack stepped closer, voice gentle. "We can't guarantee anything. But if the feds uncover the operation's current routes, we stand a real chance of finding her." She swallowed, remembering the rumblings that Carmen might have been moved to the West Coast. A wave of fear washed over her. Could Carmen still be alive after all these years? The question loomed. Warren rose from the chair, stuffing documents into a secure bag. "I'll go to the federal building downtown. I need to show them these papers face to face." Jack offered a brisk nod. "I'll arrange for extra security. Gerald won't let you hand over that info without a fight." Jessica felt a sudden pang of guilt. "What about me? Just stay here again?" Jack turned to her, expression earnest. "Yes, for now. We don't know what Gerald might try. If we lose track of you, he could seize the chance to retaliate. You're safer with my security detail around. She fought the urge to argue. Every bone in her body wanted to help actively, to be out there searching for Carmen, but logic prevailed. All right, she whispered, but please, keep me updated every step of the way. They parted ways with quick, tense goodbyes. Warren left, escorted by 2 security men, while the investigator trailed behind. Jack lingered, hesitating as if wanting to say more. A flicker of raw emotion passed over his face, but he simply squeezed Jessica's hand. "Stay safe," he murmured. She watched him leave, her pulse unsteady. The hush in the mansion felt almost claustrophobic. Hours crawled by with no word. She paced the halls, ate little, and tried to distract herself by flipping through a magazine she couldn't focus on. Near noon, the silence shattered with the shrill ring of the house phone. She snatched it up. "Hello!" Warren's voice erupted, frantic. "Jessica, the feds are on board. They believe the evidence is enough to warrant an immediate operation. They're mobilizing a task force as we speak." Her heart soared. "That's amazing. Does Jack know?" "Yes. He's with me now. We need you to gather any additional copies of Fisher's documents. And—" He paused, voice trembling. "There's a lead on Carmen. The feds have identified a possible contact in Seattle who might confirm she was there." Tears flooded Jessica's eyes. "So it's true, she was moved west." "Possibly. They're cross-referencing everything. If we can pinpoint exactly where she ended up, we might find her before Gerald tips anyone off to hide her." Jessica choked on a sob, relief battling terror. "Tell me what to do." Warren instructed her to compile every shred of data they'd gathered, notes, phone logs, the original letter from her mother. Anything that might demonstrate the chain of events leading to Carmen's disappearance. She raced to her room, rummaging through the drawers and closet. Adrenaline surged, overshadowing her fatigue. An hour later, she had a neat stack of papers ready. She stood in the hallway when Jack returned, moving briskly, phone in hand. The tension on his face rivaled that of their earlier confrontations. "We have an address in Seattle, a safe house used by the traffickers. The feds want me to go there, identify any connections to Gerald's finances." Jessica gasped. "You're going in person?" He nodded, jaw set. "Someone with the right resources has to. My presence might open doors. And if Carmen is there—" His voice faltered. She felt a pang of dread. "Then I'm coming with you." Fear flickered in his eyes. "No, it's too risky." Her tone turned fierce. "We agreed not to repeat old mistakes. I'm done standing on the sidelines. This is my sister, Jack. I have to be there." He exhaled, torn between protecting her and respecting her resolve. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but we do this carefully. The feds will coordinate a raid, and we follow their lead." Her heart pounded with a mix of hope and terror. Could they truly find Carmen? She clung to that possibility, even as the risk of facing Gerald's associates loomed large. Jack mustered a determined look. "Get your things. We leave tonight." Jessica clutched the envelope of documents, trembling. This was the turning point, the moment they left behind secrets and half-measures. They would confront the darkest corners of Gerald's network, determined to shine a light on the truth. And if fate allowed, they would finally bring Carmen home. Night draped itself over the city like a cloak as Jessica and Jack boarded a private jet bound for Seattle. Beside them sat 2 federal agents in dark suits, each wearing the grim expression of people who had seen too many cases like this one. Warren had stayed behind to coordinate with the Justice Department, ensuring Gerald's financial ties were fully exposed. Jessica stared out the window, the hum of the engines filling her ears. Since leaving the mansion, her pulse hadn't slowed. Fear and hope churned inside her in equal measure. Jack leaned closer, speaking in a low voice. "As soon as we land, the agents will take us to a safe house. From there, We'll stage the raid on the suspected location." She nodded, trying to steel herself for what lay ahead. "I'm ready." He studied her face. "No one's truly ready for something like this, but we'll do our best." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining in silent reassurance. She let herself hold on, savoring the connection. After all they'd been through, her mother's letter, the property scandal, the swirl of corruption, their bond now felt both impossible and inevitable. Landing in Seattle after midnight, they were met by 2 more agents who escorted them into an unmarked SUV. The city lights glowed across the skyline, a faint drizzle casting everything in a misty haze. Jessica's heart pounded as they drove through deserted streets and industrial areas, eventually stopping at a small office building with tinted windows. Inside, the space buzzed with quiet efficiency. Agents in tactical gear reviewed maps and photos pinned to a makeshift command center. Jessica caught fragments of tense conversation, suspected hideout. Multiple armed individuals, possible hostages. Jack turned to the agent in charge, a woman named Special Agent Alvarez. "We believe Carmen Lopez could be among those forced to work for this group," he said, voice shaking slightly. "She's been missing for years." Alvarez nodded. "We'll proceed with caution. Human trafficking cases require precision, especially if there are multiple victims. Stay behind the perimeter until we secure the site." Jessica's chest tightened. She felt both gratitude for the agent's experience and dread at the dangers involved. She and Jack stepped aside while Alvarez outlined the operation. A wave of realization hit Jessica. Tonight, we might finally see Carmen or learn she's gone forever. 40 minutes later, they were in motion, a convoy of black SUVs winding through back roads. Rain pattered on the windshield, headlights illuminating broken asphalt. Jessica glanced at Jack, whose features remained taut with determination. The vehicles stopped near a rundown building, old graffiti fading on its walls. It looked like an abandoned warehouse, windows boarded and chain-link fences rusted through. Agents in Kevlar vests hopped out, quiet urgency in every step. Jessica and Jack stayed in the second row of an SUV, hearts pounding. Through the tinted glass, she watched as the lead agents cut through a padlock on a side entrance, then vanished inside with weapons drawn. The wait that followed was agonizing, a stretch of seconds that felt like an eternity. Distant shouts echoed in the warehouse, then heavy footsteps. Jessica jumped at the crack of gunfire, her breath caught in her throat, adrenaline jolting through her veins. Jack's hand gripped hers, both of them bracing for the worst. Minutes passed before a voice on the radio reported, "We have 3 suspects in custody. Several individuals appear to be trafficking victims. Building is secure." Jessica shoved the car door open despite the agent driver's protest. "I have to go in," she insisted, voice trembling. Jack followed, ignoring protocol, as they hurried toward the building. They ducked under police tape and stepped into a dimly lit corridor. The smell of mildew and fear hung in the air. Agents escorted frightened young women from a back room, some clinging to each other, eyes wild with terror. Jessica's heart twisted. She scanned every face, searching desperately for Carmen. Some were too young, some older, none matching her sister's features. Then a figure emerged, limping slightly, supported by an agent. Her hair was cropped short, her face thinner, older, with haunted eyes. Jessica's breath caught. Carmen. The name barely formed in her mind before she rushed forward. "Carmen!" she cried, voice cracking. The woman's gaze snapped up, confusion warring with recognition. Then tears welled, and her lips parted in a silent sob. "Jessica!" They collided in a trembling embrace. Jessica felt the fragility of Carmen's frame, the desperation in her grip. After so many years, the moment was overwhelming, real and unreal at once. Carmen shuddered against her, repeating Jessica's name like a prayer. Jack stood nearby, relief visible on his face. The agents carefully ushered them aside. Carmen coughed, leaning on Jessica for support. In that brief moment, all the heartbreak and longing that had built up since Carmen's disappearance crashed down. Carmen's voice quivered. "I thought I'd never see you again. They wouldn't let me leave." Jessica pressed her cheek to her sister's. "You're safe now, I promise." Tears streaming, she glanced at Jack, who watched with a torn smile. Despite the horror around them, hope flickered. They had found Carmen. That victory blazed like a beacon in the darkness, but a cold realization followed. Gerald's reach extended far beyond this single warehouse. If he had orchestrated operations spanning multiple cities, this rescue was only the beginning of a larger battle. Yet for now, they held on to one another, hearts pounding with gratitude. Jessica and Carmen spent the night in a safe hospital wing arranged by the FBI. Doctors examined Carmen for signs of trauma, dehydration, and injuries. Though exhausted, Jessica never left her sister's side. She held Carmen's hand, gently asking questions, though her voice trembled with every word. Carmen's answers came in fragments, shadows of a life lived in captivity. She described sleepless nights, threats from men who claimed she owed them. She spoke of forced labor at secluded sites, of fear gripping her every time someone new arrived. Her voice sometimes broke into sobs, and Jessica soothed her, pressing tissues into her hands and whispering reassurances. Morning arrived slowly through the hospital's sterile corridors. Jack appeared, speaking quietly with the federal agents. Jessica gazed up at him from a stiff plastic chair, her sister asleep at last. He approached, placing a hand on Jessica's shoulder. "How is she?" he asked softly. Jessica exhaled a shaky breath. "Physically stable, mentally, she'll need time, therapy, support." Her eyes flicked to Carmen's pale face. "I can't believe she's here after all these years." Jack squeezed her shoulder gently. "You saved her." "If you hadn't fought so hard, we might never have found her." Jessica's eyes grew wet. "We all did this. You, Warren, the agents, even Fisher helped." Jack hesitated, his own emotions churning. "Speaking of Gerald, the feds have begun building a case for a nationwide trafficking conspiracy. They'll need Carmen's testimony, along with the evidence we gathered." A knot tightened in Jessica's stomach. "She's in no condition to handle that right now." He nodded, looking grave. "They'll wait until she's ready, but we can't let Gerald slip away." A flutter of rage crept through Jessica. "He threatened to ruin you, and probably would have used Carmen again if it benefited him. Now that she's free, we can't stop until he's behind bars." Jack leaned in, voice hushed. "The Justice Department's pressing charges on his associates first. Gerald's name hasn't appeared publicly yet, but it's only a matter of time before they connect the dots. We have to stay vigilant." She sank back, exhaustion weighing her down. "I want him to pay for everything he's done to my family." He brushed a thumb across her cheek where a tear clung. "He will." A nurse poked her head in, reminding them only one visitor at a time was allowed in the room. Jack stepped out, leaving Jessica to stroke her sister's hair as Carmen slept. Hours later, Carmen stirred, blinking groggily. Jessica offered her water. Once she'd drunk, her voice rasped. "You look good, Jess. Grown up?" Jessica forced a smile. "It's been a while. I'm 32 now." Carmen let out a shaky laugh that turned into a cough. "I missed so many birthdays." Jessica's throat constricted. "We'll make up for it. Right now, you need to get better." Carmen's gaze clouded. "All these years, I didn't think anyone was looking for me." A fresh wave of guilt hit Jessica. She clasped Carmen's hand. "I never stopped. I'm sorry it took this long. Mom tried too before she died. She left me a letter telling me to confront Jack Powell, to demand the truth. That's how all of this started." Carmen blinked in confusion. Jack Powell, the billionaire? Why would Mom send you to him? Jessica explained, her words tumbling out in a soft rush. Their grandparents' land, the property deal, her mother's cryptic references. Carmen listened with furrowed brows, occasionally interjecting questions. By the end, she lay silent, absorbing the magnitude of everything. So Jack used to be part of that system, Carmen murmured. But he changed his ways. Jessica nodded. He's done a lot to make amends. I won't say everything is forgiven, but he helped me find you, Carmen. He risked so much. Carmen stared at the ceiling, then finally whispered, Then I guess I owe him a thank you. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. One of the agents entered, glancing at Carmen with empathy. Miss Lopez, I'm Agent Miller. Glad you're safe. When you feel up to it, we have some questions. Carmen tensed, fear flickering in her eyes. Jessica stroked her arm. Only when you're ready, okay? Carmen gave a shaky nod, and Agent Miller left them alone. Jessica could see the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her sister. Step by step, they'd need to rebuild trust in a world Carmen believed had abandoned her. It wouldn't be easy, but at least they could face it together. After some time, Jessica slipped into the hallway to find Jack waiting by a vending machine. He handed her a coffee, and she leaned against the wall, exhaustion etched in her features. She's awake, but she's scared. The agents want her statement. Jack nodded somberly. That testimony could lock Gerald away for life. If Carmen can identify people who forced her into this network. She rubbed her temple. I hate to push her when she's just escaped, but we might not get a better chance. Gerald's sure to retaliate once he knows we found her. Jack's jaw clenched. Let him try. We have enough on him to keep him cornered. The feds are expanding the operation. They've frozen several accounts tied to Gerald's shell companies. Jessica exhaled, sipping the lukewarm coffee. It's all happening so fast. He brushed her hand gently. We'll face it together. He hesitated, eyes reflecting the swirl of unspoken feelings. When this is over, if it ever truly ends, maybe we can figure out our own future. A flutter of warmth touched her chest. For the first time in ages, a glimmer of genuine hope flickered. She squeezed his fingers. I'd like that. They stood there in quiet solidarity, the hospital corridors humming with subdued urgency. Carmen was safe, but the fight was still raging. Outside, the early afternoon light filtered through tinted windows, reminding Jessica that, despite the darkness, a new day always dawned. Back at Jack's mansion a few days later, the mood felt like a coiled spring, anticipation in every corner. Carmen remained under medical supervision, transferred to a secure rehabilitation center. Jessica visited daily, watching her sister slowly regain strength and trust. Each hug, each shared memory, chipped away at the years of separation. Meanwhile, the Justice Department advanced its investigation against Gerald. Headlines screamed about a billionaire's alleged role in a nationwide exploitation ring. So far, Gerald's name had only been referenced in rumors. But behind closed doors, the case built steadily, each new piece of evidence tightening the noose. Jessica stood in the mansion's library one evening, going through the final box of her mother's belongings. She discovered an old photograph. Her mother, pregnant and smiling, with a younger Jack in the background, perhaps from a charity event. Jessica's heart squeezed. They must have crossed paths more than once. Jack entered, eyebrows lifting at the sight of the photo. Where'd you find that? Bottom of a box, Jessica replied. I think Mum kept it hidden away. She eyed him curiously. You said you barely remembered her, but this looks like you two might have talked. He studied the picture, swallowing. I met her at a housing advocacy rally. She was passionate, fearless, and I I was just starting to understand how our acquisitions affected real people. I offered her a donation. She refused, saying she didn't want charity. She wanted justice. Jessica's throat tightened. She always stood so strong, even when things fell apart. Jack nodded. I wish I'd listened sooner. Their conversation was interrupted by the ring of Jack's phone. He answered, and his expression changed instantly. Yes, understood. We're on our way. He ended the call, meeting Jessica's anxious gaze. That was Warren. Gerald's about to be served with a federal warrant for his arrest. The press is outside his estate right now. Warren wants us at the federal building. Carmen's statement was pivotal. Relief and dread collided in Jessica's chest. So it's finally happening. Jack gently placed the photograph on the desk. Yes, Gerald might still try to run or fight the charges, but his empire is crumbling. They drove downtown through congested streets, tension prickling Jessica's skin. Paparazzi and news vans clogged the approach to the federal courthouse. Jack's driver maneuvered carefully, eventually letting them out at a side entrance. They slipped inside, greeted by metal detectors and stern-faced marshals. Warren waited in the lobby, dark circles under his eyes. He embraced Jessica briefly. Gerald's attorneys are trying to negotiate some kind of deal, but the evidence is overwhelming. Fisher's documents, Carmen's testimony, plus the financial records you all uncovered. It's enough to bury him. A swirl of emotion coursed through Jessica. He deserves it, she said, voice trembling with anger. He destroyed so many lives. Warren nodded. I doubt he'll see it that way. He'll claim he's a scapegoat, that he never knew about the trafficking. But the paper trail is damning. He can't squirm out of this. They turned as a marshal approached, leading them to a hallway where the hearing would take place behind closed doors. Jack placed a reassuring hand at the small of Jessica's back as they passed reporters, hurling questions. She kept her head high, ignoring them. Inside, the corridors were quiet. Through a small window in a heavy door, Jessica caught a glimpse of Gerald in a dark suit, flanked by lawyers. His face was pale with fury, eyes flicking to the dais where a judge reviewed thick files of evidence. He spotted Jack and Jessica through the glass, mouth twisting into a snarl. She braced herself, a shiver running down her spine. Even now, the man's contempt was palpable. Warren exhaled. He's cornered. There's no easy way out for him. A clerk instructed them to wait in a separate room until the preliminary hearing ended. Jessica sat in a stiff chair, picking at the seam of her coat. Jack paced, tension rolling off him. After what felt like an eternity, the door swung open. A federal prosecutor stepped in, a small, tight smile on her face. It's done, she announced. Gerald Barnes has been taken into custody, pending further charges. He's not getting bail. The trafficking evidence was too strong. Jessica's vision blurred with tears of relief. She pressed a hand to her mouth, heart hammering. Jack slumped into a chair, eyes closing as he muttered something that sounded like, "Thank God." Warren let out a shaky breath, leaning against the wall. A swirl of conflicting emotions whipped through Jessica. Gerald's downfall wouldn't erase the pain he caused, but it opened the path to accountability. Carmen could heal without the specter of his power looming over her. Families once terrorized by forced evictions and coerced debt could finally speak up, demand restitution. Jack opened his eyes, catching Jessica's gaze. She approached him, her voice hushed. "It's really over." He stood, a trembling smile forming. He might try appeals or pull more legal tricks, but his empire is finished. Jessica let out a sob of relief, throwing her arms around him in a spontaneous hug. For a moment, she felt the tension of years dissolve in the circle of his warmth. Their complicated journey, the letter, the heartbreak, the alliance had led to this turning point. Warren cleared his throat softly, offering them privacy. Jessica pulled back, tears on her cheeks. Now we can focus on Carmen's recovery. Jack nodded, hands still on her waist. And your future, Jessica, wherever that leads. She felt the weight of those words, a gentle promise of tomorrow. They left the courthouse hand in hand, stepping past the barrage of cameras. Though the road ahead would have its share of challenges, Carmen's healing, the rebuilding of battered communities, an undeniable sense of hope glimmered. The final chapter of Gerald's tyranny had been written, paving the way for new beginnings. Jessica squeezed Jack's hand, remembering her mother's last words, "Demand the truth and don't give up." She had done exactly that, and while scars remained, she walked out into the overcast sky with a heart far lighter than before. 2 months later, the crisp evening air carried a hint of autumn as Jessica stood on a hillside overlooking the city. The glow of skyscrapers shimmered below, headlights tracing the roads like tiny fireflies. Carmen leaned against a wooden railing nearby, wrapped in a soft sweater. Her recovery remained a work in progress. Nightmares, flashbacks, occasional surges of anxiety, but each day brought more light to her eyes. Jessica's heart swelled, watching her sister breathe freely, no longer glancing over her shoulder for threats. The past weeks had been full of therapy sessions, legal debriefings, and slow, patient healing. Now, with Gerald behind bars, Carmen had begun envisioning a future she never thought possible. Footsteps approached from behind, and Jessica turned to see Jack. He wore a casual jacket, looking more at ease than she'd ever seen him. No business calls or urgent investor meetings hung over him tonight. Instead, he joined them at the railing, gazing at the panorama. "How's the view?" he asked softly. Carmen smiled faintly. "Better than any place I've been for a long time." She shot Jessica a meaningful glance. "Thanks for bringing me here, both of you." Jack dipped his head, expression humble. "We owe you an apology for all you suffered. If there's anything I can do—" Carmen cut him off gently. "I'm learning to let go of blame. You helped get me out. That's enough for now." An unspoken understanding passed between them. Jessica felt the quiet tension that might linger for years. Her sister, grappling with the knowledge Jack had once been part of the system that hurt their family. Still, redemption had begun to blossom in the cracks of a broken past. Carmen cleared her throat. "I'm going to head back to the cabin," she said, nodding toward a small retreat house they'd rented for a weekend getaway. "Give you two some space." Jessica watched her sister walk away, each step a testament to the resilience she'd discovered in herself. When Carmen disappeared behind a tall pine tree, Jack slipped an arm around Jessica's waist. They stood in silence, the city lights twinkling. He spoke first. "I've been thinking about everything that brought us here. Your mother's letter, the property, the confrontation with Gerald. How it could have ended in 1,000 ways, but we found a path through." She leaned into him, voice quiet. "It was a messy, painful path, but I'm grateful we reached the other side." He turned her gently, so she faced him in the fading light. "I can never undo the damage I caused, but I want to spend the rest of my life making amends, not just for you and Carmen, but for all the communities I harmed." Warm tears blurred her vision. "You've already started." He brushed a thumb against her cheek, wiping a tear. "I want to do it with you by my side, if you'll have me." Her breath caught. A swirl of memories filled her mind. Her mother's worn face, her own desperation in the diner, stepping into Jack's office with that letter. Everything that once seemed impossible was now culminating here, in a single, fragile moment of hope. She inhaled, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her hand. "I want that too," she whispered. He leaned down, capturing her lips in a tender kiss that tasted of promise. The city lights sparkled behind them as night settled in, a gentle hush wrapping them in a cocoon of renewed faith. No paparazzi, no deals, no secrets, just two people choosing each other amid the wreckage of yesterday. When they broke apart, she let out a shaky laugh. My mother would never have imagined this. Jack's lips curved into a subtle smile. Maybe not. But she believed in your strength, and she hoped you'd find your own path. They turned back to the view, his arm draped over her shoulders. Tomorrow they would return to the city, continue the legal battles, push for restitution for displaced families, and stand by Carmen as she forged a new life. But tonight belonged to them, two souls who had risked everything for truth, redemption, and a love that no one had foreseen. A gentle breeze stirred, rustling the pines. Jessica tucked her head against Jack's shoulder, eyes drifting over the shimmering skyline. The ghostly echoes of the past no longer dominated her thoughts. Instead, she pictured the future. Carmen smiling, free at last. Jack working to rebuild communities instead of exploiting them. And herself, no longer defined by survival, but guided by hope. Far below, car headlights traced endless routes through the heart of the city. In that glowing tapestry of possibility, Jessica found a piece she had never known. Their story had started with an old letter and a shocking revelation, but it didn't end in despair. They had discovered a path to healing and an all-consuming love that transcended loss. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.